Cheryl and I have been married for 16 years, and those years have been truly wonderful. Our relationship has always been strong and full of love, and our home is filled with laughter, warmth, and joy. We met in our second year at university when we were young and dreaming of the future, and have stayed together ever since. We dated for about 3 years before we officially got married. I say officially because 2 years before the wedding we had already lived together and were absolutely sure that our path would end in marriage. Immediately after graduation, about 6 months later, we got married. The wedding was moderately large, but intimate and warm, in the church her family had attended for the past 20 years. It seemed like their family knew everyone there, which made the wedding truly special. Cheryl always dreamed of having a wedding in winter, when the church would be decorated for Christmas. Candles, lights, and festive arrangements created a magical atmosphere that she loved so much since childhood. It is for this reason that our anniversary falls just 10 days before Christmas. And although additional gifts and surprises between us are sometimes expensive this season, I always remember how she glowed with happiness that day, and I understand that it was all more than worth it. Cheryl and I have two wonderful children, Mark, who is now 14, and Lynn, who is 12. They are both at an age where things get a little more complicated, and family situations get even more complicated, but at the same time, they are amazing children who demonstrate resilience and the ability to adapt to change. Despite all our difficulties, I see how they are trying to understand what is happening, how they are trying to hold on, and this gives me strength. I am confident that with our support and care, they will be able to cope with this turmoil, and we will be able to help them overcome difficulties and let them know that no matter how events unfold, we will always be there for them. I found out about the mess just last week. This happened completely by accident. I was at Starbucks, surrounded by a dozen other people who were also waiting for their orders. You know how it is. A bunch of people stand around the counter, impatiently waiting for the barista to call their name. It seemed to be noisy and crowded here, as always. I was standing to the side when I noticed two guys standing next to each other laughing at a video on their phone. The guy holding the phone spoke loudly and enthusiastically, without even noticing that others could hear him. He leaned over to his friend and said with a grin, "You should have seen her, Kyle. That chick was insatiable. She does everything a guy could imagine and more." As an ordinary guy, of course, I was curious, so I looked over his shoulder. On his phone, I saw a woman having sex with my customer. He and two other guys were sitting on a couch in what looked like a large office. The other guy was sitting in one of two nice soft chairs opposite the sofa with a glass coffee table between them. I could see it because the guy currently holding the phone at Starbucks was apparently filming the video. From time to time, he would point his phone camera at other guys to catch their expressions. It was obvious from the sharpness of his movements that he was not a professional videographer, but nevertheless the picture was quite clear. What caught my attention was not only the hot sex I was seeing, but the woman in the video looked like my wife Cheryl. But of course I knew it couldn't be her, and yet I was struck by the resemblance. At first I knew it couldn't be her because my Cheryl is a happily married woman and mother of our two wonderful children. And if that's not enough to convince me that it wasn't my wife, I should know that although we have a fun and active sex life, the woman in the video did some things that Cheryl didn't even come close to doing. To me. So I knew for a fact that it wasn't Cheryl, but it certainly looked like her. I continued to look over the guy's shoulder, although I felt a little awkward. Then I saw the woman in the video walk up to the next guy on the couch. I was amazed, and judging by the expression on the guy's face, he was also amazed. I rarely watch adult videos, but I've seen something like this a couple of times. But here I was standing next to a guy who was one of the stars of the home videos. At one point I spoke up and said, "Sorry guys, I didn't mean to interfere, but I couldn't help but hear what you were saying. And then, after watching parts of the video, is there any way I can join?" Seeing that I was wearing an expensive suit similar to the one they were wearing, it became very obvious that I was not some crazy person on the street. Bill extended his hand and introduced himself as Bill, and after shaking his hand, I told him my name was Jim. Around this time, Kyle returned with coffee and Bill said, "I don't see any problem with it. We'll be over there in the corner where there's not a lot of sunlight coming through the windows." "Thank you very much. I'll be there in a minute." Bill said they would start without me. He told me not to worry if I missed a minute or two because there was more to come. While I waited, I thought and questions kept coming to my mind. She, of course, looked like Cheryl, but she could never and would not even cheat on me like that. No, it can't be. It's just a coincidence. I kept trying to convince myself that it was just some kind of mistake. Of course, it wasn't exactly Cheryl. It must just be someone very similar to her. But at least I'll see a video of someone who looks like my wife. This in itself seemed quite intriguing. After a couple of minutes, they called my name, so I grabbed my coffee and sat down on the stool next to Bill, so Kyle and I were on either side of him. By the time I got there, the camera panned to the guy in the chair. I couldn't help the loud sigh that escaped my lips. Ted Grantham, Cheryl's boss, sat there in plain sight. It was now clear to me that all this was happening in Ted's office. I could clearly see his desk in the background. I've been to his office several times since she started working there 4 years ago. My new friends Bill and Kyle looked at me to see why I gasped. Thinking quickly, I said, "God, this coffee is damn hot." They smiled, and we all turned our attention back to the small screen in Bill's hand. Oh my God, she worked at Simpson Technologies for 4 years. I began to wonder how long these extracurricular activities lasted. Much to my chagrin, I found out about 15 minutes later. I was numb and stunned as the three of us watched Cheryl, my loving, devoted wife. As she was finishing up a conversation with her boss, whom I had previously thought was a nice, respectable guy, we heard his words clearly. "Well, Cheryl, that was a great start, but don't you agree that our clients are ready for some extra attention?" Still looking at Ted as she stood up, she replied with a hint of mockery in her voice, "As you say, boss." This removed all doubt as to who this mystery woman was. Now, not only did I hear Ted call her name, but now she was looking directly into the camera. Without a doubt, it was Cheryl's voice. My Cheryl, my loving, conservative, church-going, devoted wife Cheryl. However, we drank coffee and acted as if this was a normal occurrence every day, watching my wife act like a world-class prostitute. I guess I should have been angry at him, but all my anger was directed solely at my cheating wife. In the end, I couldn't blame Bill. Cheryl is gorgeous, with the body of a 5'5" Baywatch lifeguard. Who wouldn't want her if she were so obviously available and desirable? I remember how damn proud I was when she agreed to become Mrs. Jim Iverson at age 16. No, I can't blame the three guys on the couch, whoever they were, but I blamed Ted and Cheryl for the depravity of which I had evidence before me. It got me thinking as we watched. I asked him, "So, Bill, how did you even get involved with this girl?" I was a little surprised by his answer, but not too surprised considering what I had already seen and heard. My company does business with these guys. Ted is a sales manager at Simpson Technologies, and the girl is his secretary or maybe his personal assistant, I'm not sure which. Whatever her job title, I can tell you that their relationship is definitely personal. He chuckled as he told me this. I tried to return the smile, and he continued, "The other two guys are also customers who receive special treatment for every large order they place." Wow, that's a pretty good sales incentive just for ordering, isn't it? Well, you have to understand that all three of us in this office only place orders once a quarter, and each order costs anywhere from $100,000 to over $1 million in some cases. I guess you would say we are one of the highest in the industry. So, you think you three are the only high rollers? I hoped he wouldn't notice that I was looking for information. Oh, no way. I personally know at least 20 other customers who are being treated the same way we were treated last Tuesday. I'll have to tuck that information away last Tuesday and think about it some more this afternoon. I especially want to think about whether she and I made love on Tuesday night. If so, then I think I should just vomit. I said, "Boy, I'd like to take your place for business purposes." Kyle, who was listening to our conversation while watching the video, said, "Both of you and me." Now I had to ask a couple more questions, although I didn't know if I could handle much more information. So, Bill, how long have you been doing business with Simpson Technologies? Oh, I'd say we've been in bed together for almost 7 years now. Have you always had such advantages when placing orders? No, not really. For the first year or so, there were no such additional benefits. But then, when the technology market crashed, I think Ted felt he needed to do something to increase sales. That's when he brought a girl named Susan into the office. About 5 years ago, I switched to full-fledged sex. He went on to say, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago when Susan's husband moved to the other side of the country. That's when Ted hired a new girl named Cheryl, and I have to tell you, she is much better than Susan ever was. I had to ask one more thing. And how long have you been enjoying this woman, Cheryl? Well, as far as I remember, my first time with her was only on her second day of work. That's it. Turns out it went on for 4 years, and I had no idea. The only thing that became clear to me was that Cheryl would no longer be my wife. Soon she will become my ex. Maybe once, perhaps even twice, an accidental betrayal under the influence of alcohol at a party or on a business trip, one could somehow try to understand or at least explain this. But 20-odd men in the last 4 years? No way. This is no longer an accident, not a mistake, but a way of life that I had no idea about. At that moment, I didn't know how I would pull it all off, but one thing became absolutely clear. Both Cheryl and Mr. Nice Guy would experience at least a fraction of the pain and resentment that was now burning through me from the inside. She was talking to Bill, and we couldn't make out all the words in the coffee shop, but later I heard them loud and clear through my laptop. She told him, "Bill, honey, we've known each other for about 4 years, and I really like you. I'd even like to meet you outside the office from time to time if you can get away from your wife." In the video, I heard Bill respond, "I like you too, baby. I really like you, but I've been seeing that wedding ring on your finger for the last 4 years. What about your husband?" Then it was her comment that, as I mentioned, was the last straw. "Oh, honey, don't worry about him. We have an open marriage, and he knows everything about my extracurricular activities. He gets turned on every night when I tell him what I do. I can't wait to tell him what we're going to do next." You'd think I'd remember at least some of the conversations she claims we had. And besides, it seems that as a corporate lawyer, I realize that I agree with this whole open marriage concept with Cheryl. But all this was news to me. As Kyle and I continued to watch this sex, the screen suddenly went dark. Kyle, clearly upset, asked what happened, and Bill told us that's when his phone battery died. All three of us sat back on our stools and looked drained. I offered to buy them more coffee or whatever else they wanted, but they both said they were fine. That's when I noticed that I hadn't even touched my cup of coffee, and I certainly didn't feel the urge to pour myself another. I told Bill, "I know this is a very personal video, but I found it so captivating that I would be happy to give you $100 to email a copy of it to me." "Oh God, I don't know anything about this, Jim. I definitely wouldn't want this to go around town, or worse, on the internet. I'm married, you know, and I don't have an open marriage like Cheryl, and my old lady would be very angry with me if this ever got out." "But Bill, you were holding the camera. Your face isn't even in the video. No one could know it was you. And besides that, I promise that this is for my personal use." I also mentioned that the woman in the video doesn't care because she's deliberately looking at the camera most of the time. Also, since she said she and her husband have an open marriage, the video would not be a threat to her. She might even like the idea of her husband being able to watch it. "Gee, Jim, I don't even really know you. How can I be sure this will never appear on the internet?" At this point, I pulled out one of my business cards and handed it to Bill. As he could see from my business card, I am a corporate lawyer and well versed in the law. After letting him read my card, I took the same card and turned it over and asked Bill what his legal name was, and he told me it was William R. Richards. So I wrote on the back of the card, "If I, James T., Iverson, ever published this video belonging to William R. Richards on the internet, I will pay William R. Richards the sum of $500,000. Then I signed my name. I had to write small to get it all on the card, but I have very good handwriting, so it was clear and easy to read. I knew the contract was too vague to be litigated, but the intent was there, and Bill seemed to warm to the idea. He asked, "Are you sure this will be for your personal use only?" "Absolutely. I will never sell it or post it online. I can assure you of this." Bill started to back off a little, saying I didn't need to raise my offer. But then, on reflection, he mentioned that he and his wife were going to Vegas next weekend, so maybe it would be fun to play with the extra $500. I pulled out my checkbook, wrote out a check for $500, and immediately handed the check and business card to Bill. Kyle just looked at it all with wide eyes. Bill said, "Okay, I'll do it." And with that, he opened his email account, and after looking at my email address on my business card, he sent the video as an email attachment. Within seconds, my phone rang, and sure enough, in my inbox was all the proof I needed. I opened the email attachment to make sure it actually went through cyberspace, and it opened fine. Now it's time to put the next part of my plan into action. With the email containing the video evidence hidden in my phone, I returned to my office at Barnstrow Incorporated. As soon as I logged in, I opened my laptop and made a copy of the video from my email to my hard drive, then copied it back to my cloud storage. After that, I copied it to 2 different flash drives, one for my lawyer and one to keep on my desk at home. I named the file End. I now had 5 copies downloaded and saved. Although I am a corporate lawyer and do not understand civil law, I have extensive connections and know the toughest divorce lawyer in the state. Her office was located in a building literally a couple of blocks from ours. She and I graduated from law school together, so we kept in touch over the years. Only friendship, nothing more. She and I were married and loved our spouses all these years after graduation. Unfortunately, 3 years ago, her husband died in a car accident when a drunk driver drove into oncoming traffic and crashed directly into his BMW. I called her personal number and asked if I could see her soon. She spoke briefly with her secretary, and I had an appointment for 2 p.m. It was a little over an hour from the time I called. I then called my investment broker and instructed him to immediately remove Cheryl's name from all of my investment accounts. He correctly noted that he could prepare the documents, but I would have to come to the office and sign them in person so that they could be certified by a notary. I told him I would be there between 4 and 5 o'clock in the evening. All but one of our retirement accounts were in my name alone, long before I married Cheryl. After the wedding, I added her name to the contact information, but the accounts themselves always remained in my name, not jointly owned. I don't know why I did it then, but now I'm incredibly happy about it. Thanks to this design, I could remove her name without her permission or notice. I notified HR asking that Cheryl be removed from my retirement account and emergency contact list. Not knowing who else to put in her place, I gave them my sister's contact information. Now I had enough time to go to our bank, which conveniently occupied the entire first floor of our building. All I had to do was take the elevator down, and now I was standing at the entrance to the bank. It was necessary to transfer some funds. I transferred all but $5,000 from our checking account to our savings account. Then he transferred half of the new savings balance into a personal brokerage account that he opened many years ago. This account was in another bank and was registered only in my name, indicating my office address instead of my home address. Previously, I only used it as an escrow account for certain investment transactions, so it usually only had a minimum amount of $100 left in it to keep the account active. Now this account will start seeing a lot more transactions. Much more. I arrived at the Milliken, Thompson, and Shane office a few minutes before my scheduled meeting with Janice Thompson at 2 p.m. The secretary showed me straight into the office, and Jen stood up to greet me. "Hey, Jim, that sounded really important. I hope the news isn't too bad." "Jan, it can't get any worse." Sitting down, I told her the story. Then I handed her the flash drive with the downloaded video. I mentioned key points, such as the fact that it took place in her boss, Ted Grantham's office. I showed part of the video where he instructs her to provide sexual services to clients. I knew this would be important information for a lawyer. Then I fast-forwarded to the moment where Cheryl and Bill were talking and both confirmed that they had been doing this for 4 years. I told her what Bill Richards had said about more than 20 clients who he said were receiving special privileges from Ted Grantham and Company at my wife's expense. Although, come to think of it, it wasn't at my wife's expense. She seemed to be enjoying the whole thing. This whole nightmare was at my expense. During the process, Jen saw most of the video. She sat back in her chair and said, "I'm so sorry, Jim. I can't believe Cheryl would do something like that. I don't know her very well, but I can assure you it's the last thing I would have expected from her." What could I say other than, "Me too"? Jen leaned back and asked, "Is there any chance you can work this out with her? You saw the video and heard what Bill said about her activities. There is no way in hell I would ever consider keeping her as my wife. This has been a clear and constant betrayal for over 4 years. I don't even know how many men has she slept with during this time, but I know that Ted Grantham has fun with her several times a week." I was furious, but continued. Now that I've had time to think about it, other things come to mind. Several times they went on week-long conferences or business trips across the country. I bet if we did a little research, we'd find just several trips that were legitimate. Old man Simpson will be furious when he finds out what his sales manager is doing on company territory and at its expense. "Okay," Jen said. "So, from what you said, I understand that you want to file for divorce." "Absolutely, Jen, and the sooner the better. How quickly can you prepare documents for submission?" "Well, for someone else it would take a couple of weeks, but for you I can have them ready by tomorrow, around this time. But I have to ask, how hard do you want me to act as your lawyer?" "I'm done with her, Jen. If it were legal, I would burn it. But since I physically can't do this, let's sort it out properly, both financially and emotionally." "I can arrange that," Jen replied, "but maybe you should change your setup a little since you have minor children." "You're right, Jen. I just found out about all this morning, and I'm so furious I can barely think straight." "I can do anything you want, Jim. I'll get everything ready for tomorrow, like I said. But the problem is that in our haste, we probably definitely may miss some important aspects. Can't you wait a week to get it right?" "Well," I replied, "Cheryl is leaving on Friday for a week-long event in Manhattan Beach, California. But it's only Tuesday, and I'm not sure I can stand 3 more days with her under the same roof." Jen thought for a moment and then said, "You are a lawyer for Barnstrow Incorporated, which is a large corporation. Can't you find some urgent reason at one of the branches that requires you to be absent until Friday? You don't even need to go anywhere, just use this as an excuse and find a cozy hotel in another part of the city. You can rest for a couple of days while I start preparing." "Damn, Jen, this might work. I'm going back to the office and organizing my vacation for the next 2 weeks, and I think I know a great place where I can relax and escape for a few days." Jen said this was a much better plan than trying to rush everything in 24 hours. We already had each other's numbers and promised to keep in touch daily. As I was about to leave, Jen took both of my hands and said again, "I'm truly sorry you're going through all this, Jim." Then she looked into my eyes and added, "You know that I have always admired you from a distance. I want you to know that I am here to support you whenever you need legal advice. I'm also ready to be there just as a friend and a good listener." Suddenly, she stood on her tiptoes and gave me a friendly kiss on the cheek. And then, imitating Columbo, she added, "One more thing, sir." Her eyes sparkled mischievously as she asked, "Is there anyone in Cheryl's office who you trust enough to ask a few questions without arousing suspicion?" I thought and remembered. Yes, there is one salesman who worked there before Ted arrived. He had hoped to get the position before Ted showed up. Everyone knows that he truly hates his sales boss. I think he might even know something about the special bonuses Ted offers to select clients. His name is Robert, and I know personally that Ted stole at least 2 clients from him by offering the customers special privileges. This cost Robert not only large commissions, but also his authority in the company. Why are you asking? Well, you do realize that once your divorce starts, we'll be targeting not only Cheryl, but Ted Grantham and Simpson Technologies as well, right? Yes, I hoped so. I'm glad to hear that, Jim, because not only will you get compensation in excess of 7 figures, but we will also get Ted thrown out in disgrace. And if we're lucky, he'll also go to prison for embezzlement. First, ask Robert about the Manhattan Beach exhibit. Let him find out how big the event is and where it will be held. You might as well ask why he wasn't invited. I asked doubtfully, "Why? Do you think there's something wrong here?" My wonderful lawyer responded, "I'm pretty sure there's something wrong, and if he chalked this trip up to his expense account, it might just be the tip of the iceberg. See, I grew up in Manhattan Beach. This is a small coastal town. It's certainly beautiful, but as far as I know, there is only one place there that can host large conferences, and it is clearly not designed for a technology exhibition." She continued, "You get the information from Robert, and in the meantime, I will instruct my paralegals to check all the sites within a 50-mile radius of Manhattan Beach. We'll see if there are any tech shows scheduled for next week. I think Mr. Grantham and your devoted wife are going on a little beach vacation at the company's expense. If this is true, you can be sure that we will be digging all the way back to Ted Grantham's tenure at Simpson Technologies." A smile spread across my face, and now I was the one who kissed Jen on the cheek and headed for the door. For the first time all day I smiled, which was usually unusual for me. I'm usually a pretty carefree person. Maybe some of this divorce will even be fun. Back at the office, I instructed the secretary to reschedule all meetings scheduled for the next 2 weeks. This was not particularly difficult since it was a slow time of year for my department. We mostly worked on long-term projects, and my team managed just fine without me. I am truly very grateful to have such a great team. I contacted the vice president of our division, and he gave me 2 weeks off without any problem. I have over 8 weeks of vacation accumulated because it just keeps piling up. I returned home, packed my things for the next few days, and left a note for Cheryl in case I couldn't reach her, because now I knew how busy her evenings at the office were when she provided special services to clients. I got back into my Targa and headed to the investment broker to sign the necessary paperwork. By 5:15, I was at the front desk of Thielsen Spa and Resort. Once in the room, I dialed Cheryl. The call was unpleasant not because I told her I was leaving, but because I didn't want to talk to her at all. But I was patient, and to my surprise, she answered. She was in the car to pick up the kids, and, using the speakerphone, she sounded cheerful and happy. "Hey, honey, I'm on my way to pick up the kids. How was your day?" Oh, well, I could have asked anything, but not this. However, I forced out a sad and tired tone as I tried to say, "Oh, don't ask. It was a hard day." "Oh, poor thing. Have you had a hard day, love? Come home, I'll cheer you up. I'll cook your favorite dish, and then we'll go to bed early. I have a couple of new tricks I want to show you." Yes, sure, she does have a couple of new tricks, but I'm not going to be one of them anymore. I tried to sound sad and tired as I said, "I'm sorry, honey, but it won't work. We have an unscheduled problem at our Ohio facility, and I need to leave for a few days. I already went home, packed my things, and checked into the hotel." I was a little surprised that she even sounded upset when she replied, "Oh, my poor thing," and I was so looking forward to spending time together before I left for an exhibition in Southern California on Friday. "Yeah, me too," I lied. Then he continued, "As for the children, could you arrange for my parents to take them for the whole week and even next weekend?" I knew that my parents would be happy to host our children. Luckily, they live just a few minutes' walk from the school, so this won't disrupt their routine or cause any unnecessary stress. After talking with Cheryl about letting the children live with my parents for a while, I heard her calm, almost indifferent answer. I think it's quite possible, she said, as if discussing another everyday issue. But you know that I'm returning from California on Saturday afternoon. Maybe we should take the kids home that day then? No, honey, I replied. I was hoping we could spend some time, just the two of us, on a Saturday night without the kids. Oh, now I understand what you mean. Okay, I'll ask my parents to leave them until Sunday. Thank you, honey. I'm very busy with this task and probably won't be able to call every evening, but let's get in touch sometime in the middle of the week. Okay, honey, I hope everything works out the way you want. Yes, me too. Of course, she didn't know that I hoped to get rid of her once and for all. She said, "Love you," before hanging up. I couldn't answer her in kind. I just said, "Okay, honey, I'll see you at the end of next week." This difficult call ended, and I pressed the end call button on my mobile phone. Suddenly, I realized that I had just pressed the end of my 16-year marriage. For the first time since this all opened in the morning, I burst into tears. The hotel's relaxed atmosphere made it ideal to dine in their own restaurant. The establishment was quite sophisticated, with excellent cuisine and a rich wine list, but at the same time cozy and not requiring strict formality. I usually don't drink much, but that night I decided to make an exception and ordered a whole bottle of wine for my dinner. Sitting alone at the table, I was lost in thought, enjoying the leisurely pace of the evening. Time flew by. In 2 hours, I emptied the bottle, without immediately realizing how I had finished it to the bottom. The next 3 days passed surprisingly calm and relaxed. I felt grateful to Jen for her idea to hide in this secluded corner, away from the chaos. The spa hotel turned out to be a real oasis, with ideal conditions for relaxation. Only 50 rooms, which is why it was always quiet here, and a magnificent area surrounded by greenery. 2 swimming pools, both heated, have been designed to suit the different preferences of guests. One was intended for lane swimming, and the water in it was cool and invigorating. The second pool was a cozy grotto, surrounded by greenery and sunny terraces, creating an atmosphere of privacy and tranquility. In the grotto, one could find several secluded corners that were clearly intended for romantic couples. This atmosphere, a combination of solitude and natural beauty, helped to take one's mind off problems and immerse oneself in an unusual feeling of peace. Of course, this was a place where a man would dream of taking his wife, or at least his mistress, but now I realized that I had neither. In this beautiful and secluded corner, my days and nights passed alone, filled with thoughts and unsuccessful attempts to find answers to questions that seemed endless and meaningless. I kept coming back to the same thing. Why did Cheryl do that? What was I not good enough for her at? Did she ever feel guilty about all this? Maybe I really missed something in our relationship. Who is this other woman? Who was she to her? What will Cheryl do with that bastard Ted next week? Do I still love her? Or maybe not anymore. Does she love me? Have I ever loved, or did I live in an illusion? Do I want her back, or am I ready to let her go? What will happen to our family now? These questions were intertwined in my head like a tangle that could not be untangled. I tried to imagine how we would tell the children about all this, how to explain to them what I myself did not understand, what to tell your parents and what not to say. Such questions, as you understand, would torment anyone who found themselves in a similar situation. Most of them remained unanswered, but there were also those to which I knew the answer even then. Do I love her? The answer is no. That video tore apart everything I ever felt for her. All my feelings were extinguished and my love for her was dead. Forever. There was another question, no less important. Does she love me? The answer turned out to be not so clear-cut. I'm sure if you ask her, she'll say she loves you. But her actions tell a different story. True love requires respect, and her behavior over the past 4 years clearly shows that she has no respect for me. Perhaps she feels attached to the security, to the lifestyle that I provide her. She may value comfort, tranquility, and convenience. But if she dares to claim that she still loves me, it will only be further proof that she is lying to me as she has been all these years. Another question to which I already had an answer. Do I want her back? The answer was unequivocal. Absolutely not. The remaining questions will receive their answers later, or perhaps will remain unanswered altogether. On Thursday, I spent most of the day on my laptop collecting, copying, and sending Jen a ream of our financial documents. She needed to have a complete understanding of all our assets: house, cars, bank accounts, investments, retirement savings, and even the duplex Cheryl and I purchased about 10 years ago. We completely renovated this duplex, and now it brings in a stable rental income. Jen wanted to know all the details so that nothing would be left out in the future. As I forwarded this information to her, it became obvious that she was taking this matter seriously. Jen carefully studied every detail, developing strategy and taking charge of all organizational issues. Her thorough approach gave me a sense of confidence that I was on the right path, despite all the difficulties that lay ahead. The duplex was registered only in my name, and I hoped that this would give me the right to keep it, excluding it from the division of property. After discussing this with Jen, I received clarification. Despite the fact that formally I am the only owner listed, it is not only the name on the documents that is taken into account. Since Cheryl also put a lot of effort into the house, helping with renovations, collecting rent, and making deposits, the court will likely find the duplex to be marital property. According to Jen, in such cases, the property is usually divided equally, regardless of who it is registered to. I also received a message from Robert that no one at Simpson Technologies had heard anything about any exhibition. All they knew was that Grantham had stated that he was traveling to the West Coast for business meetings, and that he needed his personal assistant to handle paperwork and necessary research. Jen said she has connections with private investigators in Los Angeles who can figure out exactly what kind of selling Grantham and Cheryl will be doing on the beach. She asked if I could provide her with a physical description of Ted Grantham so she could give it to her detectives in Los Angeles. Better than just a description, I promised to find a photo of both Cheryl and Ted. I remembered that at last year's company picnic, we took some pictures. Jen also asked to know where they were staying, and I said I would try to find out. Early Friday morning, Jen called and said that she wanted to discuss some details, but her day was completely filled with meetings. She asked if we could have dinner so we could talk about the divorce. Of course, I agreed. I clearly had no other plans for the evening. I was alone in the spa hotel, and my precious Cheryl had to fly to warmer climes at 10 in the morning. We agreed to meet at 6 p.m. at the Mexican restaurant La Casita. After a relaxing breakfast at the spa hotel, I checked out and headed home, knowing that Cheryl was leaving straight from the office to catch her plane. On the way, I stopped at a hardware store. It was time to prepare for a change. I bought a set of new locks for all the doors and a dozen boxes for her things. The boxes were durable and spacious, perfect for moving. As I put it all into the cart, I felt an unusual sense of determination. A job awaited me, which I approached with the same focus as any other task. Being a hands-on person, I was looking forward to the time when I could change all the locks myself, without anyone's help. When I got home, the first thing I did was unpack my suitcase, and then slowly began putting Cheryl's things into the prepared boxes. For a moment, I wanted to just throw everything around, create chaos, even break a few of her things out of spite. But then I thought that this would only give her a reason to blame me, to be angry with me, and besides, it would not bring me real satisfaction. I decided that accuracy and composure would have a much stronger effect. Folding each item with special care, I packed her clothes, books, and personal items as if I were indifferent and collected them. I wanted her to see this, to understand that she had lost someone who was always decent and respectful, no matter what. I imagined her opening each box one by one, her eyes filling with tears as she sorted through the things I had so carefully packed. I folded all her clothes, neatly put away her cosmetics and personal items from the bathroom, and labeled each box so she knew what was in it right away. This pedantry seemed to me a kind of final touch, a sign that I was drawing a line and closing this chapter of our life. When everything was collected, I felt hungry and went to the kitchen, and made myself a simple cheese sandwich. With this sandwich, I went out into the backyard, made myself comfortable, and, as if having exhaled all the stress of the last days, thought about the future. It was amazingly peaceful to sit there, enjoying the food and the silence, knowing that a whole new chapter of life was now opening up before me. 4 days ago, I found out that my wife, whom I considered faithful and loving, had been leading a double life all this time, turning out to be a corporate woman of easy virtue. She dated other men regularly, doing dirty deeds almost every week since she started her new job for 4 years straight. These discoveries scattered throughout my life, destroying everything I thought about our 16-year marriage. Perhaps it should have felt sad, felt pain because of a broken life and broken illusions, but for some reason all these feelings receded into the background. All that was left was anger pure and burning and the anticipation of that decisive meeting that should take place in a week. All my energy was now focused on thinking through every step, imagining exactly how I would like to play it all out. After a hearty dinner, when the house was filled with silence, I slowly walked through its rooms. In every corner, I looked for things that I thought might be dear or useful to her. At first, I just looked around, but catching my eye on some trinket, I couldn't help but think. Would she want to keep this? Shelves covered with light dust, an old cupboard with souvenirs and photographs. I carefully examined everything so as not to miss anything important. He touched every object, peering into it, as if trying to catch whether there was still a piece of her in it. I paid special attention to small collectibles, figurines that were once just cute, but now filled with sentimentality. There were photographs in the dresser drawers, moments captured on film when everything was different. A feeling of irreversibility was evident in everything, and it became clear to me that in the future I would probably have to allow her to come here with an accompanying person, so that she herself could choose what I might have missed after all, who, except her, could know the exact significance of everything. However, at least for now, I thought I had everything I needed. Anything that could keep her out of my space, at least for a while. I carefully stacked the boxes of Cheryl's things, checking each one as if they were not just objects, but memories that I would leave behind. 10 boxes was not a lot, but they occupied a significant part of her life. I carried them to her SUV, careful to hold the boxes without damaging anything, as if their contents were as fragile as the memories themselves. Closing the car door, I stopped for a moment, looking at these things as if saying goodbye to another piece of her presence in my home and in my life. This moment felt like a kind of internal cleansing, as if I had finally freed myself from the burden of the past, preparing for a new stage where she would no longer take up so much space in my thoughts and heart. It was already late Friday evening, and the thickening darkness outside the windows covered the house with a cozy, but unusually quiet canopy. As I sat alone, listening to the sounds of the empty house, I suddenly realized that Cheryl hadn't made a single attempt to contact me since I left on Tuesday. This was surprising in its own way. I expected at least a short text or call, something that would show that she at least briefly remembered me. However, not a single attempt to remind of its existence. In its silence, there was a certain coldness that penetrated more than the evening coolness, and now it hung empty between us, like an invisible barrier. From conversations with the parents, I knew that she took the children to them on Thursday afternoon. It was our old, unwritten tradition the children always spent time with my parents while Cheryl took care of business or went away for her professional needs. Still, the thought that she hadn't even called before she left for the West Coast left a slight afterglow in my soul. After all, it would seem that she had time. After all, she might have taken at least a minute to call, just to be polite or out of respect for what we once had. I imagined her packing her suitcase, carefully choosing her clothes, combing her hair in front of the mirror, enjoying every little detail that foreshadowed her professional fun for the next week. Apparently, the anticipation of these meetings and social events captivated her so much that she simply crossed me out of her thoughts. Of course, I myself wasn't going to call her either. I knew that over the next week, I would probably have to call her a couple of times to maintain the appearance of normalcy. After all, she still had no idea that I knew about her adventures over the past 4 years. I needed to keep her in the dark until I had all my moves ready. That evening, before heading out to dinner with Jen, I decided to call my parents at home to talk to the kids a little and make sure they were settled in well. I knew they were in good hands, but I still wanted to hear their voices, find out how their day went and what they were doing. Phone conversations with teenagers were always brief. They usually answered my questions in monosyllables or with slight reluctance, as if it was some kind of duty for them, and not just a conversation with their father. But behind these restrained answers and short phrases, I still felt their hidden joy. It was clear that they were happy to spend time with their grandparents, and I could imagine them smiling as they answered me in low tones. Mom always tried to pamper them with their favorite dishes. In her house, filled with the aroma of homemade baked goods and spices, the children always found something tasty. I imagined her preparing her signature dishes for them, setting the table with special care and joy. Her kitchen was always full of treats, fresh baked goods, hot chocolate, fruit, and small sweets that she prepared especially for her grandchildren. She loved to watch them eat with gusto and always tried to treat them to something special that they could then remember, like a piece of warm childhood. My father also found his own way of making them happy by telling stories about what I was like at their age. His stories were true masterpieces. He remembered how I did stupid things, got involved in strange hobbies, or found myself in funny situations. Each time he managed to find another incident from my past that made them laugh. They really liked it. They laughed listening to how their father, it turns out, was not so ideal as a child and made many mistakes. At that moment, a special connection was established between them and grandfather, and I realized that they were not just listening, but also finding something important in these stories, and understanding that mistakes can be survived and sometimes even remembered with a smile. After finishing the conversation, I realized that my children settled down there wonderfully, surrounded by attention and warmth. And although they didn't show much emotion on the phone, I felt that this time with their grandparents would leave them with the fondest memories. I also felt that the children did not mind spending time away from their mother. Perhaps they intuitively began to notice something long before I did. After talking with the children, I asked them to pass the phone to their grandmother. Trying to sound casual, I asked my mom if Cheryl had left information about where she would stay in case of an emergency. Mom replied, "Oh yeah, she recorded it for me. Now I will dictate to you." After a few seconds of silence, she returned to the phone. "Here, Jim, she will be staying at the Shade Hotel in Manhattan Beach," and dictated the address and phone number of the hotel. From the description Cheryl gave my mom, it was supposed to be a fancy place. "Thanks for looking after the kids, Mom. See you in a week, on Sunday." Now I had to hurry so as not to be late for a meeting with Jen at the cozy Mexican restaurant that she had chosen. I barely made it there when, as if on cue, she entered almost simultaneously with me. The restaurant was small, but atmospheric. Upon entering, we were greeted by a light aroma of spices and herbs, which seemed to promise an evening filled with warmth and good mood. Seeing each other, we both smiled, and Jen, without hesitation, hugged me warmly and gave me another friendly peck on the cheek, leaving a light trace of her perfume, a subtle aroma reminiscent of a summer evening. We were shown to a table in the corner, where dim lighting and brightly colored tablecloths created a feeling of privacy and comfort. We immediately began discussing what to order, laughing, wondering how hot the local salsa would be, and trading opinions on which of us would be better at handling a serving of chili. The food arrived quickly. Plates full of colorful and flavorful dishes framed our table, creating an even more pleasant atmosphere. We started dinner, and the conversation flowed smoothly from one topic to another, revealing things about ourselves that are rarely discussed even among friends. We shared stories from our lives, memories of our youth, stories of strange moments that happened to us, and both tactfully avoided the topic of Cheryl, as if we had an unspoken agreement not to touch on it so as not to darken the evening. Over time, Jen began to talk about her late husband. Her voice sounded softer, her eyes clouded for a moment, but there was a special, bright sadness in it. She talked about what kind of person he was: calm, thoughtful, with a subtle sense of humor, and those traits that, as she noted, always captivated her. Her memories were full of respect and gratitude, and I felt how important he was to her. She also shared something more personal, why she and her husband never had children. It turned out that they discussed this for a long time and even dreamed of a big family, but fate decreed otherwise. She talked about the difficulties they had experienced, about the hopes that remained unfulfilled. Her face reflected a slight sadness, but there was also wisdom, accepting those events that remained in the past. I listened, and her frankness seemed to reveal a different, deeply personal side to me. After nearly 2 hours of eating and talking, Jen asked, "Do you want to discuss business here or go somewhere else?" I replied that our evening had been so pleasant that I did not want to ruin it by talking about Cheryl and darkening the memories of this cozy place. "If it's convenient for you, let's go to my place and we'll discuss everything there." Jen quickly agreed, saying that she would follow me in her car. I was glad I had cleaned the house ahead of time while I packed Cheryl's things. Once we arrived, I showed Jen around the house, ending our tour in the kitchen, where I poured us each a glass of wine. We sat next to each other on the living room couch, facing each other but not touching. "So, Jim, how are you feeling this week?" "No need to answer in general terms. I really want to know how you cope with all this." I saw that she was sincerely interested, so I answered honestly, "Better than I expected. Sometimes I felt a little sad, but strangely enough, every time I think about Cheryl, all I feel is emptiness. It's almost as if I didn't have any feelings for her." "That's interesting," Jen replied. "Do you understand why you don't feel any feelings?" "Yes, I think I understand. I believe her actions killed any love I once had for her. When I think about Cheryl now, it's almost like thinking about some old college friend. I don't even feel like she's my wife." I noticed a slight smile appear on Jen's lips. Almost, but not quite. Then she asked, "I know this is a very personal question, Jim, so you don't have to answer, but have you cried this week?" It's easy for me to discuss this with you, Jen, and yes, the answer is yes. On Tuesday night after dinner, I sat in my hotel room and had a good cry for a couple of hours. I thought about the things Cheryl and I planned to do in the future when we grew old together. But now I think these are all the tears I can shed for her. It's all over. "I know you think it's over," Jen said, "but believe me, I can tell you from experience that when you least expect it, you'll suddenly see something or remember a moment that will bring back tears. It's not bad. This is natural, so don't be surprised, but know that over time these moments will become less frequent. Just remember, if you are there for me, I will understand and support it." "Thank you, Jen. It means a lot to me." Having said that, she moved on to discussing business. "Have you found out where she's staying in Manhattan Beach?" I told her that Cheryl had left my parents with emergency information. She would be staying at the Shade Hotel in Manhattan Beach. She told my parents that it was a luxury hotel with over 3,000 rooms and a huge conference center near the beach. Jen burst out laughing. "Shade has been a famous spot in Manhattan Beach for many years. It's a small boutique hotel, no bigger than the spa resort you stayed at." What kind of lying trash my wife has become. She even lied to my own mother. We spent the rest of the evening discussing financial and other aspects. I told Jen how I packed Cheryl's things, carefully placed all of her favorite movies in one of the boxes, and even put a wedding album on top of one of the boxes so that it would be the first thing she saw when she unpacked. Jen smiled when I explained that I wanted to just toss things around, but ended up putting everything neatly in order. I showed her how I stacked the boxes in Cheryl's car and signed each one. Jen chuckled and called Cheryl a fool for trading on someone like me. We went into the garage, where I showed her the bag of lock parts. I said that in the morning I was going to change all the locks on the doors and also reprogram the automatic gate and security system. She nodded respectfully and then asked if I had thought about sharing custody of the children. I replied that I assumed we would have joint custody and that if she stayed in town, we could change month to month. Jen said, "You know, Jim, with the evidence we have now, you could ask for full custody if you want." Wow, I didn't even think about that. But what kind of evidence are you talking about? Don't we have the same video? Well, we actually have 19 additional videos of Cheryl and a lot of different men. And both Cheryl and Ted are present at each of them, and the other participants change all the time. 19? Where do we get 19 videos? My assistants are true masters of their craft, Jim. These are great detectives, and they really give it their all. They recently discovered something that you probably won't be very happy to hear, but it's important to know the truth. They came across a site entirely dedicated to unfaithful wives, and your wife, as it turns out, is one of the main stars there. These are not just random pictures or rumors. This is a whole collection of videos in which she participates and which are up for sale for everyone. We bought several of these videos for $19.99 each to see if it was true. The most annoying thing, Jim, is that these posts have become quite popular among users of the Sinful Wives website. Someone is making a lot of money selling records of your wife. We're looking into the details, but for now, everything indicates that Ted Grantham, her co-worker and part-time sales manager at Simpson Technologies, is also involved in this video business. It seems that he is not just her colleague, but one of those who films and perhaps even organizes these videos. If our suspicions are justified, Grantham will face serious problems with the law. First of all, it will be difficult for him to justify himself if he cannot provide legally valid documents signed personally by Cheryl and all the clients who participate in these videos. Without signed and notarized releases from everyone clearly shown in these recordings, he could face serious charges. And this is just the beginning. We can go further, file a lawsuit against the owners of the site for illegal distribution of content involving your wife and demand significant compensation for damages. Such a lawsuit could cost them a huge amount of money, since they are violating privacy rights and likely have no legal basis for publishing these materials. "Oh my God, Jen, I just can't believe this," I muttered, feeling the anger and despair creeping closer. My wife. She became some kind of internet star, exposing herself to everyone. The idea that strangers are watching her, that her recordings are available to everyone, it just boggles my mind. I fell silent, feeling a wave of helplessness and rage wash over me, not allowing me to breathe. My chest tightened, and for a moment I lost the ability to continue. Then, trying to compose myself, I exhaled and asked with a quiver in my voice, "But Jen, how much will all this legal investigation cost me? How much money will it take to get to the bottom of the truth and possibly start a lawsuit?" Jen suddenly laughed loudly, and her laughter suddenly had a calming effect. She shook her head and, looking at me with a kind but determined smile, said, "Oh, Jim, don't worry about it. You know, I could give you a serious bill for the work done, especially considering the scale of the investigation. But I understand perfectly well how important and painful this matter is for you, so I will offer you a preferential rate. At the end of the day, we're friends, and I'm ready to support you in any way I can." She was silent for a moment, and then, after a pause, added with a mischievous smile, "By the way, when we finish this case and bring everything to trial, you will probably be swimming in money so much that you can retire right now. Believe me, the compensation we can demand from those who distribute these recordings without your consent can cover all your expenses and allow you to no longer worry about finances for the rest of your life. This is not only a question of truth, Jim, but also a question of justice. We will achieve our goal, I promise." Her confidence gave me strength. I felt that perhaps this path would truly lead me to retribution, and the process itself would become not only a fight for my rights, but also a chance to restore my sense of self-worth. Then she asked if I wanted to know the address of this site. I thought about it and decided that it was probably better not to see it myself, since my lawyer was aware of all the details. "I think I've already seen more than enough. I don't need to see any more." I bowed my head, feeling tears begin to form in my eyes. I wasn't thinking about money at all, I was thinking about my wife. "Cheryl, on the internet, I hope our children never find out about this. I hope her parents never find out about this either. God, Cheryl, what have you done? Jen put her hand on my shoulder and assured me that she was confident that she would be able to shut down this internet site and delete all videos, not only of Cheryl, but also of other women. She suggested that most of these women, most likely, also have no idea that they have become internet stars. Many of these videos may be uploaded as revenge by some offended ex-husband or boyfriend, she said. But you know, Jim, it's likely that many of these videos have already been downloaded to personal computers, and we have no way of knowing how many of them are there now. It's a pity that it's impossible to seize all copies. Well, apparently this is something she will have to live with for the rest of her life. Do you think these videos will help me get full custody of my children? I asked. Not the videos themselves, since in our time they can be considered an expression of freedom of speech. But in one of the videos she talks quite a lot about you, and some very offensive and humiliating things were said. Since the videos are in the public domain, the court and social services have the right to take their content into account when making a decision. After thinking for a couple of minutes, I said, "Listen, Jen, I don't want to see these videos, but could your team do an audio recording of exactly the parts you're talking about so I can think about the custody issue?" "Of course, Jim. It will be ready by Monday afternoon. For the next week, I have already scheduled meetings for you every day at 4 o'clock to think through the strategy. You'll be the last time I see you every day. Is that okay with you?" "Yes, Jen, absolutely. Thank you so much for everything you do. You are just like a heavenly gift to me." With that, I held up 4 photographs of Ted and Cheryl at the company picnic. In one of the photos, Ted even hugged her, and they both smiled at the camera. It hadn't bothered me before, but now I realized that his arm wasn't the only thing that had been around Cheryl for the past 4 years. How blind I was, not noticing anything. Jen and I both stood up, knowing that everything was taken care of. I walked her to the door, and unexpectedly for myself, kissed her, but this time not on the cheek. It wasn't a long kiss, it wasn't a French kiss, but believe me, it was a kiss. When we pulled away, Jen looked me in the eyes and said, "See you Monday, Jim. Call me any time, day or night, if you need anything before then." I walked her to the car and held the door while she got in. Watching her sit behind the wheel of her stylish Mercedes 500 SL convertible, I realized what a wonderful woman she is. I stood in the driveway, watching until her taillights disappeared from view. With the exception of 2 long, vigorous runs, which helped me feel a little refreshed and distracted, and a round of golf on Sunday afternoon, the entire weekend, Saturday and Sunday, was spent doing housework and gardening. I started Saturday morning with the usual household chores, cleaning the rooms, putting the kitchen in order, and tidying up those corners that had long needed attention. When that was done, I headed into the garden. I trimmed the bushes, weeded the flower beds, and replanted several plants that were already crowded in their old pots. The fresh air, sunlight, and smell of the earth were a kind of therapy, and I felt a sense of comfort and calm gradually return. In the afternoon, I decided to take on a more serious task that I had been putting off for a long time, replacing all the locks in the house. It was not an easy decision, but it helped me feel in control of the situation and finally distinguish between my previous and current life. I carefully removed the old locks, working with a tool I had used so often that it seemed like an extension of my hand. As usually happens with such projects, the process did not go entirely smoothly. Halfway through the work, I discovered that I had purchased a locking mechanism for the front door of the wrong diameter. I had to leave the tools and go to the hardware store to get the right part. This store had its own distinctive scent of wood and metal shavings, and oddly enough, I felt more confident in choosing exactly the mechanism I needed. Returning home, I continued my work. Installing the locks was not an easy task and required precision and accuracy. Despite the minor glitch and wasted time, I finally finished the project, feeling satisfied that I had accomplished something meaningful and useful. The work took a little longer than I expected, but in the end, everything went smoothly. On Sunday evening, sitting in the quiet of my living room with a glass of red wine, I finally allowed myself to think about how exactly to handle the upcoming confrontation. The night was thickening outside the windows, plunging the room into soft twilight, and I, looking at the dark glass, seemed to be peering into the future, trying to predict every step, every word that would be heard on this important Saturday. I knew that the moment was inevitable on Saturday afternoon and evening. When Cheryl returned from her trip to the California coast, I would have to dot all the I's. In my mind, I went over possible scenarios again and again. Her reactions, my words, all the options for how this conversation could unfold. I hoped that Cheryl and Ted Grantham had some fun and relaxation there under the sunny skies and waves of beach paradise. Let this vacation be her last bright memory, because on Saturday evening everything will change. This meeting will be a real confrontation with reality for her, with a truth that I have been collecting and building in pieces for so long, and which I now intend to present to her face to face. I planned my actions to the smallest detail, thought about every phrase I would say, every paper I would show. I was ready for the world that she had so carefully hidden from me to collapse in an instant under the weight of indisputable evidence. On Monday morning, when the first rays of sun illuminated the deserted streets, I went for a run again. The cool morning air was refreshing, bathing my face with a slight chill, and with every step I felt the tension go away, leaving a feeling of lightness. My pace was confident, my muscles were energized, and as I ran my usual route, I suddenly realized that I was in better physical shape than I had been in years. This amazing discovery not only brought me a sense of pride, but also awakened something deeper. With each step, as my breathing became more even and rhythmic, I began to reflect on the fact that I actually felt not only physically better, but also emotionally renewed. The thoughts that had previously weighed down and bothered me seemed to begin to fade, and I began to wonder if perhaps I actually knew on some subconscious level that something was wrong in my life. Perhaps this long-hidden tension was slowly eating away at me from the inside, like an invisible poison, affecting everything from my mood to my physical condition. Maybe it was this constant feeling of uncertainty and doubt that poisoned my health, plunging me into a strange apathy that did not allow me to truly take care of myself. But now that I had finally realized the truth and made the decision to fight for myself, I felt the weight that had weighed me down for so long lift away. The awareness of my own strength and determination to cope with all this gave me not only a surge of physical energy, but also an inner uplift. I've been putting off replacing the sand in my pool filter for a couple of months now, knowing that it wouldn't be the most pleasant job. But finally, I decided to take on this, throwing away all excuses. I gathered my tools, put on my work gloves, and got to work. Dust and dirt kicked up in clouds every time I removed the old, wet sand that had gotten into all the crevices of the filter, and it took longer than I expected. Although the job was messy, I still felt satisfied when I finished it. Now the pool looked cleaner and the water clearer. When the work was completed, I went home to take a long-awaited shower, washing away all the dust and fatigue. After the shower, I quickly cleaned myself up and began to prepare for my meeting with Jen, scheduled for 4 o'clock. By the time of the meeting, I was fresh and full of energy, ready for a serious conversation. We met in her office, and the meeting was more than productive. Jen shared the results of her work, detailing each step she took and the evidence she was able to collect along the way. Her professionalism and confidence instilled peace of mind and reassured me that I was on the right track. In addition to the investigative report, Jen showed another significant step forward. She had a draft of documents for filing for divorce, as well as a full text of the claim, prepared taking into account all possible legal aspects and arguments. This was not just a draft, but a verified legal document detailing my position. She patiently explained each point to me, answering all my questions and pointing out parts where I might need more information. Her thoroughness and support instilled confidence, and I felt that this process was in the hands of a true professional. The demands we were making were quite severe, and I thought they were almost excessive, so I asked, "Jen, do you really think Cheryl will agree to all of this?" Jen looked at me with a serious, almost stern expression on her face. There was a mixture of confidence and determination in her eyes, and I knew that she had thought through her every next step. In a calm but firm tone, she said, Of course, you must understand that she is unlikely to want to easily agree to our terms. But in our state, Jim, the situation is in our favor. There is no such thing as a no-fault divorce here. The law still views adultery as a serious offense. Adultery here is considered not just an ethical mistake, but a real crime, which is defined by law as a justified and compelling reason for divorce. I listened to her words, and she continued, confidently building up her arguments. You and I have not only extensive and irrefutable evidence of her betrayal. The facts that we have collected are not just rumors or suspicions, but significant evidence, videos, correspondence, documents that cannot be ignored or refuted. Moreover, we have another important basis for our demands. We have evidence that directly indicates that she behaved as a very unsuitable mother. This is not just speculation, but material that will undoubtedly impress the judge. Jen paused, letting me digest what she had heard, and then added with confidence in her voice. With this evidence, we can not only justify the need for a divorce, but also challenge her right to custody, show the court that you can provide children with much more stable and secure conditions. She, of course, will try to fight, but facts and the law will stand on our side. We are ready to defend your case and achieve justice for you and your children. Jen noticed the worried look on my face and asked me what I was thinking. Look, I replied, I know we have a lot of evidence, but there is one thing I can't get around. I know Cheryl loves our children, and although she betrayed our marriage, she has been a good mother to our children this entire time. I'm not sure I want to take them away from her completely. A look of respect appeared in Jen's eyes, and she said, Jim, you truly are one of the last good people in this world. I can't believe Cheryl turned you down for the part of the walker. She not only betrayed you, but also violated her marriage vows. I understand your position on children and custody. I'm confident that when the judge sees our evidence, we can get whatever we want, so I'll file a joint custody request. We will offer a change of place of residence for children every second month. We will also insist that Cheryl remain living in the children's school district after the divorce. Jen made a few notes on her notepad and continued, You'll have to provide health insurance for the kids, and I think you'll also want to cover any medical expenses not included in the insurance, whether the kids are with you or her. You won't need any more child support since you're splitting custody. Each of you will be responsible for daily expenses while the children are with you. Is there anything else you think we should include regarding custody issues? After discussion, we decided that I would create an educational trust fund for each of the children that would cover the cost of tuition, course materials, and housing at the public university or school of their choice. If either of them decides not to go to college, they will not receive the education trust. Trust funds will only be paid directly to the university or school. Any unused funds will be returned to me by the age of 25. However, starting at age 25, they will be able to receive funds from a separate trust fund of $50,000 for each of them. Payments will be distributed evenly over 5 years until the fund is completely depleted. This should help them get started, whether as newlyweds or as support at the start of their careers. In addition, on the occasion of their graduation, I will buy each of them a car worth up to $20,000. The condition will be that we choose it together. Jen suggested also adding a clause about Cheryl's residency. This clause provided that if Cheryl ever moved out of the children's school district, they would live with me full-time. It will also state that we will arrange a suitable meeting schedule for Cheryl and her parents if she leaves her children's school district. When we finished discussing all these issues, it was already about 5:30, and I suggested that Jen have a snack together before leaving for home. She readily agreed, and it became our tradition for the rest of the week. On Friday, I suggested they go out to dinner at a nice Italian restaurant, and then come back to my place so I could discuss my plans for the upcoming confrontation with Cheryl. I wanted to get legal advice to make sure what I was doing was legal. Within a week, I bought 6 small hidden video cameras with audio recording, equipped with motion and sound sensors. They were connected to a home computer to immediately download all video files into one archive. I placed 2 cameras in the living room, one in the hallway, one in the kitchen, and two in our bedroom. I explained to Jen that the purpose of these cameras was to record the entire conversation so that there would be no doubt in the event of an accusation on her part. Jen was impressed with my preparations, but also concerned. Be honest, Jim, what exactly are you planning? Nothing violent, I hope. First, remember that Cheryl has no idea that I know about her 4-year affair. It seems to her that she is returning to her loving husband, who undoubtedly missed her all these 10 days. Don't forget that I called her on Monday and again on Thursday to make her think everything was okay. Good idea, Jen noted. I continued, usually when one of us goes away, we talk every evening. But I immediately told her that I would be very busy and would not be able to call as often as usual. Believe me, these conversations were not easy for me. I tried to pretend that everything was fine with us, although this was far from the case. When I called on Thursday, she was out of breath and sounded visibly agitated. I guessed why she was out of breath, but when I asked, she replied that she ran to the phone in the other room and could not find it for a long time. Of course, I doubted it because there were men's voices in the background, and at one point I heard Cheryl probably cover the phone with her hand and say, "Stop it, I'm talking to my husband, he doesn't know anything." The truth is, she didn't know that I knew everything. The only thing I didn't know was how many men were in that room with her. I told Jen what kind of reception I was planning for Cheryl on Saturday. I knew from past occasions that she and that creep Ted would stop by the office first after the airport. They always explained this by saying that they wanted to pick up mail or notes from other employees who might need attention during the weekend. Now I realized that they were doing this so that they could say goodbye to each other in his office before returning to their spouses. Because of this stop at the office, I didn't know the exact time this bastard would drop Cheryl off at home, but I assumed it would be around 5 p.m. Things will get a little tricky at this point. I don't want her to walk into the bedroom or bathroom to find her things already packed, so I'll meet her at the door. I told Jen that I was going to meet Cheryl in the most attractive outfit I could muster, with Velcro handcuffs and a silk strap in my hands and a sly smile on my face. She's usually always very horny when she gets back from a trip, so I'm hoping this will work. Now I understand that the reason for her arousal is guilt and the desire to compensate for her betrayal in a perverted form. The plan was to greet her with, "Honey, I have a surprise for you this evening, but it will require tying you up a little. What do you say?" Knowing her and considering what a slut she has become, I think she'll agree, but she'll probably want to change clothes and shower after her cross-country flight. And this is where the fun begins. I'll tell her that I don't want her to come into our bedroom because everything is already prepared for a special evening, and I want it to be a surprise. Then I'll explain that I've already hung her short silk robe in the guest bathroom, along with her favorite shower gel and body lotion. I'll tell her that I want her to go there, freshen up, and come out only in a robe with nothing underneath. I promise to meet her with a glass of her favorite white wine and explain what will happen next. I'm pretty sure the intrigue will keep her from going into the bedroom, where she might find her things and toiletries missing. Now I need your legal opinion, I continued. I'm going to let her tell me about her business trip, even though I know that everything she says will be complete nonsense. But I need to keep her talking until she has at least 2 glasses of wine. I will not add any prohibited substances to the drink, only wine. I know that after 2 drinks, she will be more relaxed. Jen asked the question, "Jim, you're not going to physically harm her while she's tied up, right?" "No, of course not. Once she's relaxed, I'll explain that I'm going to take her to our bedroom, where I'll restrain her arms and legs and prop up her upper body with pillows so she's in a reclining position. I'll tell her that I found a movie that we can watch on our TV in the bedroom. I'll explain that we will watch it together." "Sounds almost like fun," Jen commented. "And to enhance the effect, I will show her the gag that I am going to insert into her mouth so that she cannot speak and ask her to stop. I think she will be completely excited and agree to this, and this is where I need your legal opinion. If she agrees, this will relieve me of any responsibility, so that later she cannot claim that I forced her to do something against her will. Jen asked, I'm guessing the movie you're going to watch is the footage of her servicing men in Ted's office, right? Exactly. This is exactly what we're going to watch, and I'm going to make her watch all 53 minutes. Oh, that's great, Jen responded approvingly, then added, if you record her clearly agreeing to this, it will be seen as the actions of two adults who voluntarily agreed to what is happening. Just make sure you don't physically harm her with whips, chains, or blows unless she clearly consents to such treatment on camera. There will be no problems with this. I'm not into such things. Her only physical discomfort is the soft Velcro handcuffs. That way, you'll be safe from a legal point of view, and if she tries to start a scandal, we'll have the CCTV footage to prove it. Okay, then this is my plan, and as soon as the video ends, I will hand her the divorce papers and say, Cheryl R. Iverson, you have been served with the papers. I can't describe how much I look forward to saying these words. I'll take off the gag and see what she says. I can imagine that she will be seriously embarrassed. I'll tell her that her things are already packed and waiting for her in her SUV. Then, before she has a chance to throw a tantrum, I'll just say I'll be in the kitchen with a cup of coffee if she wants to talk. After that, I will leave the bedroom. Do you think this will work, Jen? Well, Jim, I can't say for sure whether it will work or not, but I can say that from a legal point of view, it is legal. As for whether it will work, I'm not sure what exactly you want to achieve this way. I hope Cheryl feels terrible about everything she did and that she spends the next 2 weeks crying and remorseful. That's what I want to achieve. Jen looked at me, clearly thinking about my words, and asked, Jim, I have to ask you this question, even though I think I know the answer. Do you hope she breaks down, repents, and begs for another chance? What if she asks for another chance to fix everything and get your relationship back? I must have looked puzzled when she looked at me. I was silent for a few seconds and then responded, Absolutely not, Jen. The damage is too deep and it has been going on for too long. All I want is to give her some of the emotional pain that she caused me. Jen took on her lawyerly tone and said, In that case, you should listen to the audio that my staff cut from one of the videos. I know you don't want to see pictures, but to give context, she's with two men. Honestly, I'm glad you don't want to see this video because I think it's really disgusting. Your friend Ted is sitting in a chair and looking at all this with a grin on his face. With that, she handed me the CD and suggested that I listen to it before Cheryl returned home tomorrow evening. Jen then stood up, put on a light jacket, and headed towards the door. I touched her hand, and she turned to face me. Looking into her eyes, I said, Thank you, Jen. You've done so much for me. I kissed her on the lips and felt how she seemed to want to hug my neck, but then changed her mind. I walked her back to her Mercedes SL 500 and held the door while she got in. I couldn't resist and glanced at her legs. Small black lace panties flashed there. At that moment, she looked up at me and smiled. Gotcha, she simply said. It's okay, Jim. I enjoy looking at you too. And so I stood again with the disc in my hand, watching her taillights disappear into the distance. It was a busy evening, so I decided to listen to the disc the next day so as not to spoil the impression of what had just happened. Saturday morning began with bright, almost blinding sunlight that penetrated through the windows and filled the room with warm golden rays. It seemed that the day promised to be calm and bright, but inside me everything was different. The whole house was shrouded in the heavy feeling of the impending conversation, and despite the sunshine, the emotional cloud hanging over my thoughts did not allow me to relax. I felt tension filling everything around me, as if the air had become thicker and denser. To distract myself a little, I went for a morning run, hoping that the usual movements and fresh air would help me calm down a little. Running has always helped me clear my thoughts, and this time was no exception. With each step, the tension slowly released, leaving room for a sense of control and determination. Returning home, I made myself breakfast and, sitting at the table, forced myself to rest a little before returning to my plans for the day. After breakfast, I decided to call the children to find out how they were spending their time and if everything was okay with them. Their voices on the other end of the line immediately filled me with a warm feeling of joy. They were in a great mood and vying with each other about their adventures with their grandparents, how Grandma baked a cake for them, and Grandfather again told funny stories from my childhood, making them laugh until they cried. I listened, smiling, imagining their faces and cheerful laughter, and for a moment I felt that this conversation brought at least a little serenity into my day. When they told me all their news, I said that I would come for them on Sunday afternoon. The children were delighted, and I heard them respond joyfully to my words, although they were glad to spend another day with their grandparents. After finishing the call, I put down the phone, feeling a strange combination of relief and excitement. It was a long day ahead, and thoughts about the upcoming evening, when Cheryl was supposed to return, popped up in my head again, bringing back that same feeling of a heavy cloud that had been hanging over me since the morning. I glanced at the disc, knowing that I wouldn't like what I heard, so I decided to get everything ready for the evening before listening to it. I found her short silk robe and hung it in the guest bathroom, along with her favorite body wash and body lotion that I had to grab from one of the boxes in her car. Then, in the master bedroom, I placed 4 candles and placed a fresh bouquet of flowers on the dressing table. I thought that by seeing the flowers and candles, she wouldn't notice the hidden cameras and the absence of her personal belongings and photographs. Out of sheer stubbornness, I decided not to change the bed linen, even though I had been sleeping on those sheets all week. I thought that a dirty woman doesn't deserve clean sheets. Of course, she won't know about it, but I will know. I carefully folded the coverlet and comforter onto the bench at the foot of the bed where she usually placed them. Everything looked perfect. I inserted the video disc into the player and rewound it to the beginning. Then he placed the gag, Velcro handcuffs, and silk rope in the living room. I set out 2 wine glasses and made sure everything was ready, even though it wasn't even noon yet. I didn't feel like eating, but I knew that there was a long evening ahead, so I made myself a sandwich and went out to lunch on the terrace. I was tense and calm at the same time. How Cheryl ruined everything. I knew that right at that moment she was flying home from this fun beach vacation. Their plane was supposed to land at 3 p.m. She usually didn't get home until a couple of hours after landing, even though the airport was only a 15 to 20-minute drive from their office. I used to not understand why it took her so long to get home after a short stop at the office, but now I know the reason. As I already mentioned, I expected her to return around 5 in the evening. While I was cleaning up after lunch, I saw the disc on the kitchen table again and decided to put off listening to it for a while, getting some sleep first. I usually don't sleep during the day, but this time I managed to sleep for an hour. I woke up refreshed and ready for the evening ahead. Knowing that my cheating wife would be back in a couple of hours, I quickly took a shower and put on silk sport shorts and a muscle-emphasizing tank top. I knew that she always loved the way I looked in this outfit, and I wanted to look my best, knowing that it would all be recorded on video. After styling and getting ready, I headed back downstairs to the kitchen where I grabbed a cold beer. The disc Jen had left was still on the kitchen table. Well, I said to myself, it's time to listen to him. The recording sounded like it was done professionally. At the beginning, the voice of the announcer, apparently one of Jen's paralegals, announced the date of the recording and described the characters. He also mentioned that the original video is kept at the office of the law firm Milliken, Thompson, and Shane and can be provided upon request. The recording did not start from the very beginning of their meeting. From then, I heard one of the men say mockingly, "Your hubby can hardly give you the same sensations as we do, right?" Cheryl's response was immediate. "He doesn't even come close, honey. I need real men like you and Leroy if I want to be happy and content." She then added, "You two have made me feel like a real woman for the last 3 years. I wish I could live with you." Apparently, the second man, whose voice was deeper and rougher, asked, "What about your husband and your children?" Cheryl's response hit me hard. "I don't give a damn about my damn husband and those obnoxious kids. They are just a burden to me. The only reason I would keep the kids after leaving my husband is because they would be my ticket to a nice child support payment every month. And of course, I am counting on decent amounts of alimony, which will cost him a lot of effort. The first voice asked the question again. So, are you thinking of leaving him to live with us? But we have wives, and they are unlikely to be happy if we bring home a white woman of easy virtue for fun. Then I heard a third voice, which I immediately recognized as the voice of her boss, Ted. Don't worry, guys. Cheryl is going to leave her husband and move in with me after I throw my wife out on the street. But to put your mind at ease, even when we are together, she will still be serving our clients at Simpson Tech, and you two are high on the list. A hoarse voice asked a clarifying question. So she will still be a corporate woman of easy virtue. Oh yeah, replied Ted Grantham, but now we won't have to make up excuses for her weakling husband. I heard Cheryl's familiar sexy chuckle, and then the recording suddenly stopped, and I realized that Jen's paralegals had not copied the rest of the conversation or what was happening. That was enough. I heard everything I needed to hear. My heart broke again, but now, more than ever, I was ready to meet the woman I had once considered my loving and faithful wife. I assumed that her plane had already landed, and indeed, about 15 minutes later, a message came from her. I just left the office. I'm going home. I can't wait to see my big man. 2 hearts and a kiss were added to the message. Perhaps in the past such a message would have aroused my excitement, but now it only made me nauseous. I hope I can control myself when she arrives so she doesn't suspect anything unusual. Looking out the window, I saw Ted's black Lincoln Navigator pull into the driveway. The windows were heavily tinted, but I could clearly see Cheryl leaning toward the driver, apparently to kiss him, before opening the passenger door. At the same time, the rear trunk door automatically opened. My heart was pounding, and I tried to calm myself as Cheryl pulled out her rolling duffel bag and headed towards our house. Before she walked up the steps to the front door, she turned and blew her boss a kiss. Apparently, this was in the order of things, but I had never seen her return home from such trips before. When she walked through the door, she was greeted by her loving husband. A smile played on my lips as I stood in front of her with Velcro handcuffs and a silk rope in my hands and a sly smile on my face. She said, "Hello, darling. What do we have here?" Instead of immediately kissing her, as I usually did when she returned from trips, I simply smiled and said, "Well, honey, I was reading a little in one of your women's magazines about naughty games and thought we could. I'd like to try something new tonight." Then I winked at her, and she replied, "Oh, you are my naughty one. What are you up to?" I explained that I had found a movie for us to watch in the bedroom, and that I had everything ready for an unforgettable evening if she wanted to join. Just as I expected, she replied, "God, Jim, that's so unlike you, but it sounds juicy and interesting. I'll just take a shower and clean myself up first." Knowing that this was the point where my plan might go awry, I quickly said, "I thought you would want to freshen up, but everything is already ready in our bedroom, and I want it to be a surprise. So instead of going to our bathroom, I prepared everything you needed in the guest room. Go, freshen up, and then come to my living room. I will greet you with a glass of your favorite white wine and explain what will happen next." I knew that if she went into our bedroom and saw that her things were gone, my plan would fail and there would be an argument, but she just smiled and said, "Wow, love, you took care of everything right." I told her that her favorite red robe was hanging on the guest bathroom door. She giggled softly, the same giggle I once loved so much, and headed into the guest bathroom. That laugh had once seemed sexy to me, but now it only disgusted me, especially after I'd heard it on tape just an hour ago. Jen warned me to make sure Cheryl was completely willing to be tied up. She especially wanted me to record her consent to the gag. Jen explained that if we had a videotape of her consent, it would protect me from any charges and would make the recording admissible in court if it was ever needed. It seems my plan was going even better than I could have expected in this regard. I heard the shower turn off, and a few minutes later, a barefoot Cheryl walked down the hallway and into the living room where I was waiting for her. I guess she was so captivated by all the intrigue of what was happening that she didn't even notice that I didn't kiss her. To be honest, I didn't want to kiss her. I could be anyone, but not a careless, humiliated husband. I handed Cheryl a full glass of her favorite white wine and invited her to sit down. Once she was settled, I said, "Before we start our evening, I want to tell you a little about what's on my mind. Is that okay?" She took a sip of wine and replied, "Whatever, my lover." "Okay, we've never used handcuffs before, so I want you to look at them to make sure they're soft and designed to hold in place without unnecessary discomfort or pain." She picked up the silk Velcro handcuffs and examined them. Noticing there were four, she asked, "I take two for my wrists and two for my ankles, correct?" "That's right. And you'll notice that each handcuff has a metal ring attached to it. This ring allows me to attach the fasteners at the ends of these silk ropes to the handcuffs." Stroking the steel rings and looking at each 8-foot-long rope, she said, "I assume the other ends of the ropes will be tied to the four legs of the bed." "That's right, baby. And one more thing. I want to use this gag so you can't talk." I gave her a gag to examine. "This will increase your feeling of helplessness. Do you mind?" Cheryl laughed languidly again and said, "Oh, baby, we have an exciting evening ahead of us. Lead me to our bedroom, my good sir." It seemed to me that her agreement could not have been more clear. Everything was going too smoothly. I wish the rest of the evening could have been as easy. At least that's what I hoped she could be for me. As for Cheryl, I didn't care at all. I told her that before I went up to the bedroom, I wanted to hear all about her business trip. In fact, I didn't want to listen to her lies. I just wanted her to have time to drink another glass of wine. She fed me another round of lies about what important connections they had made and how successful the exhibition was. Then she told me how wonderful the hotel in Manhattan Beach was. Finally, I reminded her that my parents had the kids until late Sunday evening, so we had all the time to ourselves. I took her hand and led her to the bedroom. As soon as she walked in, she noticed candles and flowers on the chest of drawers. She smiled her sexiest smile and sat down in the center of the bed, lying on her back. I placed 3 pillows under her head and shoulders and asked if she was comfortable. She smiled and said that not only was she comfortable, but she was really looking forward to seeing what would happen next. I fastened the handcuffs to her wrists and ankles one by one. Then he tied each rope to the legs of the bed, making sure there was enough room for it to move slightly, but not so much that it would roll over or come loose. I must admit, she looked very seductive, lying in her short red robe, her hair freshly washed, dried, combed, and spread over the pillow. If I still loved her even a little, I would be overcome with intense desire. Instead, all I saw was a liar, tied up and ready to have her life ruined once again. Then I lifted the gag and, making sure that I was standing so that the camera could clearly film her face, I again asked if she was happy with everything that was happening and if she agreed for me to insert the gag. Excitement flashed in her eyes as she said, "Do whatever you want, I'm all yours." I thought to myself, "Yes, at least for this last night you are all mine, and then it will all be over, woman of easy virtue." I inserted the gag and turned off the overhead light. I then turned both bedside lamps to the first of 3 levels to create a subtle lighting effect in the room. The atmosphere was romantic, but there was just enough light for a good recording. Of course, I wasn't that concerned about the video's image quality. I was more interested in what she would say when she watched the little DVD I loaded into our Blu-ray player. When everything was ready, I took out a long peacock feather, a new ostrich feather, 2 clothespins, and a leather whip and put them on the bed. Cheryl looked at this and opened her eyes wide. I knew I had no intention of using these items. They were only there to agitate her further. Then I asked, "Are you ready to watch?" She, of course, couldn't answer me clearly because of the gag, but she made an affirmative sound and nodded, making it clear that she was ready for what her sweet hubby had in mind for the evening. One thing she knew for sure, it was completely different from me. We had never watched this together before. I acted much more like her boss, Ted Grantham, than like the husband she was used to living with. I took the remote and told her that I really wanted to know what she thought of the video I had chosen. With that, I pressed the play button. 3 seconds later, she recognized the interior of Ted's office at Simpson Technologies. She immediately began to squirm and tug at the cuffs on her wrists and ankles. She couldn't scream, but certain moans and sobs could be heard through the gag. I just smiled and told her that she better get comfortable because there was still a whole 50 minutes of the movie ahead. Her eyes started to fill with tears, and she looked straight at me, but I told her to focus on the movie and not me. She turned back to the screen. By the way, these Velcro handcuffs work very well. I can confidently recommend them. I sat on the bed next to her thigh and turned the volume up to almost maximum. For the next 10 minutes, I just watched silently with her. Then, as usual, what I saw on the screen with the participation of my faithful wife began to disgust me, and I pressed pause. I told her that I thought she might enjoy the video alone. I then told her that I had made several copies of the same video, one for her parents, one for her sister, one for the pastor, and one for Ted Grantham's dear wife, and of course, one for my divorce lawyer. There was a look of horror in her eyes, and I could see how much she wanted me to stop the video and free her, but instead I said I would be back in an hour. I pressed play again. I got up and went down to the kitchen to grab a beer and think about what to say when I got back to the bedroom. I checked the time on my watch, knowing that if I waited an hour, she would have 10 to 15 minutes of silence after the video ended. Maybe she'll have time to think about how far she's fallen. And with some luck, by the time I return to the room, she will be crying her eyes out. I did as planned and chuckled to myself as I sipped my cold beer and imagined my cheating wife's life falling apart in the upstairs bedroom. When I returned to the bedroom an hour later, I didn't know what to expect. I saw that Cheryl had her eyes closed, and there were dark stains from mascara and tears on the pillow. As soon as she noticed that I was back, her eyes widened. But instead of expressing shame or remorse, I saw anger and even arrogance in her eyes. This was not at all what I expected or hoped for. Before releasing her wrists or ankles, I bent down to remove the gag from her mouth, and immediately a stream of dirty insults poured from her lips, twisted in contempt. How dare you tie me up and force me to watch this video to the end? A couple of minutes would have been enough to satisfy your pathetic plans. You are just a weakling for tying me up like this. Well, I replied, that's not quite the reaction I was expecting. I thought you might at least be a little remorseful for the way you acted in that video. After all, for the last 16 years, I've thought that you are a faithful, devoted wife and mother. And now it turns out that you are nothing more than a dirty, cheating woman of easy virtue of the highest category. When I said the word, woman of easy virtue, her face changed. Tears began to flow from her eyes again, and she began to sob. I brought a box of tissues from the bathroom and put it on her. Then one by one I began to free her from the cuffs, first from her wrists, then from her ankles. Wiping away tears with a napkin and sobbing in pain, she abruptly changed her tone. "Oh, Jim, I'm so ashamed. I can't believe what I saw on that video. It certainly looked like me, but I couldn't do such a terrible thing. They must have slipped something into my tea at lunch, otherwise I wouldn't do something like that. And I swear it only happened once. I've never cheated on you before, and nothing like that has ever happened again after that day. Jim, please believe me, you know I wouldn't lie to you." I couldn't believe my ears. This woman sitting next to me was lying to my face, and I knew it. My lawyer, Jen Thompson, collected over 19 videos that her assistants purchased and downloaded from the site. She also had 12 more DVDs that her operative and Robert's assistant had taken from Ted Grantham's office, while he and Cheryl were on one of their week-long business trips. These 12 videos were being edited for sale on the Dirty Wives website. The operative made copies of each disc and returned the originals, so that no one except Robert even noticed that they were missing. As Jen said, "It's amazing what you can do for a couple $100 in cash." According to Jen, the video Cheryl just watched, which I received from Bill Richards at the cafe, was the softest of all. Others were much more outspoken. I doubted whether to tell her that I had evidence of her infidelity on at least 32 occasions, but decided to remain silent for now. Look, Cheryl, even if it was just one time, what you said and did in the video and the expression on your face clearly did not resemble the behavior of a woman under the influence of illegal substances. You knew perfectly well what you were doing. But how did you get this video? I didn't know that someone was filming my humiliation. Oh, come on, Cheryl. You even looked straight into the camera a few times and told her, "Don't lie to me that you were drunk or on something. We're done with you." With that, I pulled out a large envelope from my dresser drawer and, handing it to her, said, "Cheryl R. Iverson, you are being served with a notice." I waited for these words for a whole week, and when I said them, I felt great relief. Before she could even process what I had just handed her, I continued, "All of your things are already packed and loaded into your SUV. You have 10 minutes to get dressed and get out of my house." "You can't do this to me," she screamed. "If anyone should leave home, it's you. This is my home, and I'm not going anywhere." With an icy look, I replied, "Okay, if that's what you want, then so be it, but pay attention to these 5 envelopes. Each of them contains a copy of this DVD and the following letter." I held a copy of the enclosed letter in my hands and read it to her while her ankles were still shackled to the bed. "Dear Sirs, attached to this letter is a video of Cheryl J. Iverson breaking our marriage vows behind my back. It happened in the office of her boss, Ted Grantham of Simpson Technologies, in October 2018. My lawyer has 32 other similar videos in his possession, showing much more explicit and lewd things with various men than what you will see on the accompanying DVD. Cheryl has already received a divorce summons, and the process has already begun. I wasn't originally going to send you this video, but she forced me to do it. I'm sorry for the distress this has caused you, but please understand that she has ruined my life and our family. Sincerely, James T. Iverson. Cheryl could clearly see that the envelopes were already signed and stamped. One was addressed to her parents, the second to her sister, the third to her pastor, the fourth to the top president, and the fifth was addressed to Mrs. Theodore Grantham, but there was no stamp on it. I told her that I would personally deliver this envelope to make sure that it would not be intercepted by her husband. Then I added, "Cheryl, it's up to you whether I send the first 4 letters. If you leave quietly and do not resist the divorce, these envelopes will be destroyed. But regardless of your actions, the 5th envelope will be given to Ted's wife personally. Do you understand?" She nodded and, rubbing her wrists, freed her ankles from the cuffs and silently walked to the closest to grab some clothes. I let her walk to the door, only to see her surprised expression when she opened the closet to find it completely empty. She turned to me and I said, "Don't look in the chest of drawers or the bathroom, they're empty too." "What should I wear?" she moaned. "I think you'll have to wear the same clothes you arrived in." She stood there in shock, and her shoulders slumped as she went to the guest bathroom to retrieve the only clothes she had left in the house. As she walked down the hall, I said, "You can take this robe with you, and as part of the divorce papers, you will find instructions that you can call me within 10 days to arrange a time when you can return with an escort and pick up the rest. Things that we together decide to leave you." In a final act of defiance, I heard the bathroom door slam. About 10 minutes later, she came out, dressed in traveling clothes, with a robe draped over her arm. Picking up the suitcase she had left by the front door, she lowered her head and asked, "What about the kids, Jim? Will I be able to see them soon?" "Listen, Cheryl, you completely destroyed our marriage, but you will always be their mother. I will never use your actions to turn them against you. I just hope they never find your videos on the internet, because that's where I found 19 of them." Cheryl snapped her head up and said, "Oh my God, you're kidding, right? My videos couldn't be posted online, could they?" To this, I simply went up to the counter where we had a notepad, wrote down the website address, and handed it to her. I then said that once the divorce is finalized, my lawyer will work on deleting the video, but this is not an easy task. All the evidence we've collected indicates that your wonderful boss is making thousands of dollars selling your videos to this site. Cheryl looked at me for the first time since I took off the handcuffs and said, "Jim, would you believe if I told you I still love you?" Looking her straight in the eye, I answered honestly, "No, Cheryl, I won't believe you for a second. I don't know who you are anymore." Opening the drawer in the table by the entrance, I took out her keys and handed them to her, adding, "You will notice that I have already taken the house keys off your ring. You wouldn't need them because all the locks have already been changed." She moaned, "I have nowhere to go. Where should I go, Jim? Honestly, Cheryl, I don't care where you go. Just get out of my house." And with these words, I closed the door behind her. For a moment, I thought that I could at least help her carry her suitcase to the car, but after an ice-cold beer, that desire disappeared. So, it's Saturday evening, and I'm a free man again. Crap. My life is a complete nightmare. Apparently, the first thing Cheryl did was call Ted Grantham to tell him what I had done and how exactly I had arranged it. In response, he began to persuade her that I still could not achieve this, and that if she followed his advice, she could ruin me through divorce proceedings. At one point, she asked him about the site. In response, he again told her a bunch of lies, saying that he had no idea what she was talking about. I didn't tell her that my lawyer and her team had already traced financial transfers leading directly to Ted Grantham. Moreover, all correspondence and transfers of funds took place through the Simpson Technologies office. This fact will clearly play into my hands and make me a very wealthy person. On Sunday, I explained to Mark and Lynn that their mother and I had separated and were getting a divorce. I expected a strong reaction, but surprisingly, they only asked a couple of questions about where they would live and what I was going to do next. During the conversation, it became clear that they had both long suspected that their mother was probably having an affair. It turns out that they had been sharing their observations and discussing it among themselves for a couple of years. They put all the pieces together after hearing many suspicious phone conversations that they accidentally overheard. At first, they thought that I knew everything and was simply doing nothing for their peace of mind. They believed that since everything was so obvious to them, then I was in the know too. Both begged me to be allowed to stay with me, no matter what. The following week, Cheryl left nearly 50 voicemails on my cell phone and completely filled up our home phone's answering machine. I didn't listen to them and eventually just turned off the answering machine. Since each of the children already had their own mobile phone, we decided to abandon the landline phone altogether. This will save us money and prevent us from getting those annoying phone calls during dinner and Cheryl's calls. My secretary at work already knew that I didn't want to take any calls from Cheryl. Moreover, the company's security service was informed that Cheryl Iverson was prohibited from being on company premises, both during working and non-working hours. Later, I learned from the children that she was staying with her parents. Unable to contact me otherwise, 10 days after our last conversation, I received a handwritten letter from her. At first, I was going to throw it away without reading it. But then I thought that since she bothered to write it, I should at least know what she wanted to say. The letter turned out to be quite good. "Dear Jim, I don't even know what to say about all this, except that I'm incredibly sorry that I caused you so much pain and grief. As you know, my actions over the past 4 years are completely inconsistent with my character and completely contradict all my life principles. I don't know what happened and made me do such terrible things. You were right. I was not drugged or forced into such a terrible lifestyle. I did all this of my own free will, although the first time it happened was after a business lunch with Ted and a client where I drank 4 cocktails. As you know, this is far outside my norm. So the first time I was really drunk, but that's no excuse. I did what I did, and there is no excuse. After I left home on Saturday, I went to my parents and, without going into details, explained to them that I had cheated on you and that, most likely, we were facing a divorce. As expected, they were extremely upset and angry at me for ruining such a wonderful marriage. Until now, they believed that this was an isolated incident and not something that I had done regularly over the past 4 years. I'll tell them the truth, but not now. Later that night, in my old room, I went to the site you told me about and was shocked by what I saw. Oh, Jim, I'm so sorry you had to see that. I feel ashamed, and now I understand why you don't want to talk to me or even think about fixing this. I accept your decision. On Monday morning, I burst into Ted's office and asked him point blank about the site. Of course, he denied everything, but I submitted my resignation with immediate effect. I left Simpson Technologies and never returned. Now I have started going to a small church on the other side of town where no one knows me and have already met with the pastor twice for counseling. I understand that I will need help to get through this crisis that I have created for myself. Know that I will always love you, even if my actions say otherwise. With love, Cheryl. To be honest, despite everything, the letter was not bad. But her next step again gave me conflicting feelings. Cheryl hired a young lawyer who was recommended to her by Ted Grantham. She did not contest the divorce, but countersued, seeking lifelong maintenance, full custody of the children, and significant alimony. In addition, she claimed half of my retirement savings, sole ownership of our home, and the duplex we rented nearby. When Jen showed me these documents, I was alarmed, but looking at my face, she just laughed out loud and said, "Oh, this will be fun. I just love tearing these young lawyers apart. Don't worry, she won't get any of it." Then she asked again, "Jim, we still need to finalize custody. You know I can get you full custody. Do you still want joint custody?" Listen, Jen, I know that deep down Cheryl is a good mother, and despite the way she treated me and our marriage, I am confident that she loves our children. Can we arrange joint custody so that the children live with me in even months and with Cheryl in odd months? I want the kids to stay in the same school district, so she will be required to live in that district. And what's more, if she ever moves to another city or state, will the kids stay with me? With deep respect in her eyes, Jen replied, "Of course, Jim, I'll arrange it that way. Just know that with all the video and audio evidence we have, the judge will accept any offer we make, no questions asked." Since I had not been involved in divorce proceedings before, I did not know what to expect. Although I am a corporate lawyer, I rarely have to appear in court. My experience was limited to trials involving fraud, theft, or tax evasion. I've been involved in inheritance cases on occasion, but this whole divorce process was new to me. On the day of the trial, everything turned out to be much simpler than I expected. Only Cheryl and her young lawyer sat at the table opposite us. The judge sat at the head of the table and Jen was next to me. There were 5 people in the room: the judge, me, Jen, Cheryl, and her lawyer. The judge looked at Cheryl, shook his head, and said, "I hate to say this, Mrs. Iverson, but I watched some clips of the video provided by the plaintiff in this case. I also just listened to audio clips from another video in which you talk about your intentions to, as you put it, suck your husband. You also state that your only interest in the children is that they can be used to obtain substantial child support from Mr. Iverson. What can you say in your defense?" Cheryl's young lawyer immediately intervened, stating that neither he nor his client knew of the existence of any audio recording taken from the video. He also protested against the use of such a recording without first verifying its authenticity. I was somewhat surprised by the judge's reaction when he said, "Clean your head, young man. Your client was caught red-handed and should be ashamed as her crime is obvious." The court recognizes the plaintiff's claim as justified. The request for divorce will be granted immediately. The defendant will be entitled to half of the joint checking and savings accounts. She will also retain full ownership of the vehicle she currently drives. Plaintiff will retain exclusive title to the family home as well as to the vehicle which he currently drives. Both Jen and I were surprised at how quickly the decision was made, but the judge didn't stop there. In addition, the defendant will retain full title to the duplex located at 424 Oxbow Street. The family home has a mortgage on it, and the equity is roughly equal to the value of the duplex she owns free of encumbrances, so I see it as a like-for-like exchange. I am denying the defendant alimony, and instead she will be able to live on one side of the duplex, and the rental income from the other side will be the only support she can count on. Additionally, I deny defendant full custody of the children and grant joint custody as set forth in plaintiff's proposal, with the condition that Mrs. Iverson reside in the children's current school district. By the way, a duplex also meets this condition. But the judge didn't finish there either. For the record, in light of defendant's continued egregious conduct, she will not be entitled to any additional marital assets, including current or future retirement accounts. If, in the future, the former Mrs. Iverson attempts to rescind or modify any provision of this judgment, she will then forfeit title to the duplex, transfer it to Mr. Iverson, and be obligated to pay plaintiff the full amount of any liquid assets she received as a result of this judgment. We were all shocked when he ended his tirade. In other words, any attempt to obtain anything other than what has already been agreed upon will result in the former Mrs. Iverson losing everything, and 100% of all assets will be transferred to the plaintiff. Clear? Cheryl's lawyer literally jumped out of his seat and shouted, "We understand everything, but we are protesting in the strongest form." The judge calmly looked at Cheryl, then at my lawyer Jen, and said, "If this statement is made by your lawyer on your behalf, then I will simply transfer all assets to Mr. Iverson immediately. In this case, you will walk away with nothing, and Mr. Iverson will be given all assets and full custody of the children. Is this what you want?" Cheryl's lawyer sat down with a completely pale face, not knowing what to say. Cheryl spoke up, saying, "We accept the ruling as you put it, Your Honor." The judge handed the documents to both Cheryl and I to sign. Everything else went without further ado and was almost unreal. The judge signed the documents, then put his official seal, and that was it. He stood up and said, "Thank you for coming today. Case closed." He then shook hands with Jen and me, but did not offer it to Cheryl or her lawyer. He walked out the back door into the hallway leading to his office. After he left, both lawyers put down their files, and we all left the room. In the court hallway, Cheryl turned to me and asked, "Jim, can we talk?" I looked her in the eyes and simply replied, "No." Jen took one of her business cards out of her bag and handed it to Cheryl. "If you have any questions about your divorce, or if you would like to pass on a message to my client, you can contact me and I will pass on your message to him. Since it is an even month, the children will live with my client. We will contact you in the last week of this month to arrange the transfer of children for the next month." We both turned away from Cheryl and her lawyer and left the courthouse. Already on the street, I walked Jen to her car. Holding onto the door to help her sit up, I caught a glimpse of her beautiful legs and asked, "How about dinner and dancing tonight?" She smiled her dazzling smile and replied, "With pleasure, pick me up at 7. That evening became truly unforgettable for me. The kids spent 2 nights with their grandparents again, as I didn't know what to expect from the trial, so I had the whole house to myself until tomorrow evening. At exactly 7 o'clock in the evening, I arrived at the entrance to the luxury residential complex where Jen lived. Her slender figure was already visible at the front door. She stood there, waiting for me, with a small bag in her right hand. When I saw this bag, my heart involuntarily sank. For a moment, it seemed to me that this was a work bag. This thought did not fit into my plans for the evening. I just wanted to spend time with her, without talking about business and current problems. Without waiting for her to get to the car, I quickly jumped out to help her. Jen smiled at me and handed me the bag, asking me to put it in the trunk. With a slight sigh, I accepted her bag, trying not to show my slight disappointment, and carefully put it in the trunk. At that moment, I was again overcome with mixed feelings. I really hoped that this evening would not turn into a continuation of the workday. When I returned to the cabin and began to fasten my seat belt, curiosity got the better of me, and I couldn't help but ask a question. "Why did you take your work with you?" I asked with a slight tinge of disappointment, looking sideways at her. I was hoping that we would just enjoy the evening, without business or discussion. She replied, "What makes you think that this bag contains work materials? Don't you know a girl needs some sexy lingerie and a few other things if she's planning on spending the night somewhere else?" "Wow, baby," I exclaimed. "Let's have dinner. I think we'll need all the energy we can muster." We both laughed as I drove off. The dinner and dancing exceeded all expectations, making our evening something exciting and exciting for both of us. We laughed, shared stories, and every moment was filled with a special atmosphere, where there was a clear, almost tangible sexual tension between us. I felt it with every smile, every glance that slid over me, every accidental touch. There seemed to be something electric in the air that forced us to be a little closer to each other, not allowing us to separate even a step. I was eager to take Jen home with me, and deep down I was sure that she felt the same. Her eyes sparkled with some special light, and I saw her lips subtly lift in a slight, mysterious smile, which she may not have even realized. But despite all these signals, I couldn't stop wondering what exactly attracted a woman like her. At the end of the day, I always considered myself just a good guy, nothing special. Jen, on the other hand, was dazzlingly attractive, confident, and radiating a magnetism that was hard to resist. Her beauty, her manners, the ease with which she communicated, all this could conquer anyone, and I knew that many men would dream of being in my place. The thought kept spinning in my head. Why is she so happy to be here, next to me? This feeling, a mixture of surprise and trembling admiration, did not leave me, but at the same time added a special poignancy to everything that was happening. We went to my place and made love. As we lay in bed, falling asleep in each other's arms, Jen kissed me and said, "Don't forget, tomorrow at 4 o'clock we have a meeting in my office to discuss the next step, how we will secure your future." I couldn't understand how she could think about work at such a moment, but when she said this, she simultaneously kissed me tenderly. I don't remember Cheryl ever doing this, and I didn't even know it could feel so good. I understood that every next meeting with Jen would be filled with both work and love. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized that one of the things Cheryl said on that tape was actually true. All this time, at least the last 4 years, Cheryl pretended that she was happy with me. I didn't notice it before, but after what I just experienced with Jen, I finally understand what it looks and feels like. Jen was a real woman, and I knew I would never let this precious woman go. With a smile on my face and a feeling of incredible lightness, I finally fell asleep, realizing that I had truly fallen in love, perhaps for the first time in my life. Lying in the dark, I replayed the events of that evening in my head, experiencing a sweet feeling of excitement and peace at the same time. I used to be sure that I loved Cheryl, that our life was based on sincere feelings. I remember how I tried to be a good husband, a caring partner, and how I sincerely believed that I felt deep affection and tenderness for her. But what I felt for Jen now was completely different, much stronger and deeper than anything I had ever felt. These new feelings captured me completely, as if opening up a hitherto unfamiliar world. There was something about Jen that made every minute spent with her a moment of joy and inner liberation. She became a real source of light and warmth for me. Her laughter was contagious, and I noticed that next to her I laugh and smile much more often than in all recent years. Remembering all our conversations and her jokes, I suddenly realized that she awakens in me that sincere joy that I have not known for a long time. In her company, I could be myself real, without any masks or tension, and it was amazing. It brought me genuine happiness. I could no longer imagine days without her ringing laughter, without her shining eyes, and those cheerful conversations that so easily drew us in for long hours. Jen became a source of joy, warmth, and lightness for me, and I knew that this was more than just a crush. Jen was already asleep, comfortably settled. I was truly happy. I usually wake up before the alarm starts ringing, but the next morning we both woke up to the insistent buzzing of the alarm clock. It was a work day, and we both had morning meetings. I told Jen she could use the bedroom bathroom, and I would go into the guest bathroom and put on the coffee. She smiled and suggested, "Wouldn't we save time and water if we showered together?" God, how I love this woman. We were already acting like a married couple, and I liked it. I found myself thinking that it would be wonderful to do this for the rest of our lives. Luckily, I had time to stop by the bakery the day before and buy a bag of fresh Danish puffs for my morning breakfast. In the morning, when the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen, we sat down at the table together, surrounded by cups, fresh fruit, and buns with a crispy, flaky crust. The coffee was hot, and the puff pastries were soft and sweet, making this simple breakfast surprisingly one of the most memorable moments. We sat opposite each other, smiled, and talked, as if forgetting about time and everything that was going on around us. In her presence, everything became so natural and simple, as if we didn't need anything else. I watched her laugh, caught the light in her eyes, and realized that the feelings I was experiencing had long outgrown simply falling in love. I am not just attached to this woman, I am completely captivated by her, with her every gesture, every word. Her laughter and smile became a source of happiness for me, and every minute I felt more and more that I did not want to lose it. Grinning, I found myself thinking, well, just catch me, baby, and pull me towards you. And this internal challenge, this light response in my heart indicated that I was ready for this, ready to surrender to this feeling without fear or doubt. Jen picked up her bag, and I offered to drop her off. Either to her apartment or straight to the office, I didn't care. She replied that she already had everything she needed for the workday, so I could drive her straight to the office, which was only a block from mine. I added that I would pick her up after our meeting at 4 o'clock. And for dinner, I added. She smiled again dazzlingly and said, "Of course, dear. Dinner at the restaurant and dessert at my place." That Wednesday, I really had a lot of work to do in the office, and work from the very morning required full concentration. Preparing for a divorce and all the emotional experiences that accompanied this process made me temporarily lose control of some work tasks, and now they seemed to come in a wave, demanding my attention and not giving me a break. It was hard not to notice that over the past few days, several projects and documents had begun to accumulate on the table, forming an impressive pile of things that needed to be dealt with. In a sense, this blockage even came in handy. Immersing myself in work issues and organizational tasks, I did not leave myself a single free minute to get distracted and start thinking about what happened the previous night. If I had even a little free time, I would undoubtedly be lost in my memories again, and thinking about Jen would make my heart beat faster again, making it impossible to concentrate on work. This workload allowed me to temporarily distract myself from her image and fully concentrate on completing tasks, albeit with the thought that as soon as the workday was over, all these feelings would come flooding back. During my lunch break, my phone rang and my father's name flashed on the screen. He called with the good news and got straight to the point, asking if the children could stay with them until the weekend. It turned out that they were all having a great time together, and moreover, were immersed in a new joint project for their grandmother. Judging by the father's tone, the children were incredibly enthusiastic. They decided to do something special, but as it turned out, they would need a few more evenings to complete the project. I, of course, replied that this was quite possible, and I was pleased to hear that they were so enthusiastic and happy with their grandparents. To make sure nothing was left out, I asked if they needed any additional items from home clothing, school supplies, or maybe materials for their project. My father assured me that if anything was needed, he would drive them home after school to pick up what they needed. His willingness to help and care for the children once again reminded me of how reliable my parents have always been for us. After finishing the call, I returned to work with a sense of relief, knowing that the children were in good hands and enjoying time spent with their families. The time was approaching 4:30, and I began to get ready to leave the office and walk to the building where the office of the company Milliken, Thompson, and Shane was located. This place had already become familiar to me, and upon entering, I felt a slight confidence that now they would recognize me here. The secretary, seeing me, just smiled welcomingly and gestured towards the corridor leading to the partners' offices. The hallway was spacious, with dim lighting and soft carpeting that muffled footsteps, creating an atmosphere of calm and concentration. On this corridor, there were four partners' offices, spacious, bright, with wide windows, which offered an impressive view of the eastern part of the city. These offices, with perfectly selected furniture and decoration, emphasized the respectability and status of the company. Nearby was a large paralegal room, where 6 legal assistants worked behind neat rows of desks, intently focused on their tasks. Everyone had their own work area, equipped with everything necessary for work, and the employees themselves maintained an atmosphere of professionalism and business activity. At the end of the corridor, there was a spacious recreation area for employees, furnished with taste and comfort. There were comfortable sofas, small tables, and a kitchenette where you could make coffee or have a snack. From the window, there was a view of the northern part of the city, which was slightly different from the panorama visible from the windows of the offices facing east. The northern landscape gave the recreation corner a calm, peaceful mood. Along the corridor, there were also 2 consulting rooms for private meetings with clients, a library with an impressive collection of legal literature, and a large glass enclosed meeting room in which important meetings were held. In addition, there were 2 bathrooms, and of course, at the farthest end, next to the recreation area, there was a spacious storage room where all the necessary materials and equipment were stored. Every detail in this office was thought out to the smallest detail, creating ideal conditions for efficient work of employees and reception of clients. Jen's office door was open, and I poked my head in, saying, "Hello, hello, beautiful." Her smile flashed instantly, and she stood up, walking towards me. I closed the door, and as soon as we heard it click, we started kissing. After about 3 minutes, Jen pulled away with a smile on her lips and lowered her voice and said, "We have to work, so please sit down." Each partner's office was a spacious, elegant room, ideally furnished and thought out to the smallest detail. In the center of the room, there was a massive wooden table, made of dark, polished wood, behind which there were several chairs for visitors, upholstered in high-quality leather. The table radiated impressiveness and solidity, symbolizing the status of a partner, and everyone who entered the office involuntarily felt an atmosphere of professionalism and trust. Not far from the table was a comfortable leather sofa, next to which stood an armchair, forming a cozy corner for more informal conversations or discussions in a relaxed atmosphere. In another corner of the office, with no less taste, there was a mini bar counter equipped with a refrigerator, a compact sink, and a set of elegant glasses. The bar counter added a certain luxury to the office and allowed partners to offer clients a refreshing drink without leaving the workspace. The furnishings included a small walnut work desk with 4 chairs, where documents could be spread out or a small meeting could be held. The nice shade of walnut gave the office a warm and cozy feel, striking a balance between formality and comfort. Behind the main table was an inconspicuous door leading to a private bathroom, where everything was provided for the convenience of a partner: a shower, a sink, and a small wardrobe. This separate area allowed partners to freshen up after a long day of work or prepare for an important meeting without leaving their office. Jen sat down at her desk, and I sat down opposite her. There were 3 folders with legal documents on the table. She clasped her hands in front of her and said, "The first thing we need to do is determine the amount we will seek in these claims. Keep in mind that the likelihood of receiving the full amount is small, but this will be our starting point." I was a little confused, and apparently it showed on my face, so I asked, "But the divorce has already been finalized, and the decision has been made in our favor." Jen smiled and replied, "Honey, that was just the first step. Further actions will help you secure your future." She picked up the first folder and continued, "This lawsuit is against Simpson Technologies. We are filing a complaint of sexual harassment because your ex-wife, or rather Cheryl, was forced to provide sexual services to clients as part of her duties. Most often, these meetings took place on the premises of Simpson Technologies and with the knowledge and sometimes at the direction of Ted Grantham, its immediate superior." Jen let me look at the folder and then continued, "We have clear and irrefutable evidence on video that points to the company's guilt. I propose to file a lawsuit in the amount of $20 million, given the severity and duration of the violations." $20 million? Are you crazy? Old man Simpson will never do this. I was surprised. "Listen, Jim, I've looked into the company's entire corporate structure, their insurance coverage, and Mr. Simpson's net worth. Believe me, $20 million is a reasonable amount to start with. Realistically, We expect them to settle out of court, and it will likely be closer to half that amount. But Jen, I argued, how can I file a sexual harassment claim if the harassment was directed at Cheryl and not me? And besides, she is no longer my wife. Jen explained that the sexual harassment not only affected Cheryl, but also me, as it destroyed our marriage. Moreover, we have a video where, among other things, they repeatedly made offensive remarks about you, which only aggravates the situation. So, how about we start with 20 million? I could only agree, well, okay, I think I'll follow your advice in this matter. Jim, you're a corporate lawyer yourself. If someone came to your company with such a package of evidence against Barnstraw Incorporated, what advice would you give? Jen asked with a smile. I nodded and admitted, you're right, Jen. We would fire Grantham immediately and try to settle the case out of court as quickly as possible. Jen chuckled and said, we can include in the lawsuit that Ted Grantham be fired. I think Old Man Simpson will fire him anyway, but let's add this requirement just in case. Great, Jen replied, making quick notes in the folder. She then picked up a second folder labeled Theodore Grantham. Opening it, she said, the next step is lawsuits against Ted Grantham personally, one for breaking up a marital relationship, another for adultery, and a third for sexual assault. These lawsuits may only bring in a few $100,000, but we are virtually guaranteed to win the case. I've already researched his finances. He has about $300,000 in liquid assets, about $140,000 in equity in their family home, and several retirement accounts totaling about $1 million. Plus, he has fully paid for dacha on the lake, which he inherited from a rich uncle 2 years ago. I immediately perked up and, without hiding my interest, asked, a cottage on the lake. All my life I dreamed of a house by the water. Is she really good? Jen smiled, clearly pleased with my reaction, and replied, very good, believe me. This is a spacious log cabin with 4 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. On the top floor, there is a large attic with 4 bunk beds, so there is enough space even for a large group. The house can comfortably accommodate up to 16 people, so it is simply ideal for family celebrations and meetings with friends. Each of the 4 main bedrooms and even the attic has its own bathroom, which makes living here especially comfortable and private for each guest. In addition, there is an additional shared bathroom on the ground floor, which is especially useful during large events or if someone is relaxing in the common area. This home was built with care and attention to comfort, so everything is provided here to make everyone feel at home. I noticed the admiration with which Jen described the house, her eyes sparkling as she continued, clearly inspired. The main floor is spacious with an open floor plan, where the huge living room flows into the dining area and a completely updated kitchen with modern appliances and spacious countertops. From the kitchen and living room, you can access a huge terrace with a magnificent view of the lake, ideal for morning coffee or evening meetings with friends in the fresh air. She smiled, as if imagining the view, and added, and on the lower level of the house, there is access to the site and a real games room, equipped with everything you could want for relaxation and entertainment. There is also a full-fledged bar, so you don't have to go upstairs for drinks, and a pool table, ping pong, and table hockey. This area is just designed to have fun and completely relax. In addition, there is a bathroom so that nothing distracts from your rest. The house seems to be created for large companies, private evenings, and simply quality relaxation in nature. Wow, have you seen this place in person? I asked. No, but we have plans, photos, and a description from a local real estate agency. Thinking out loud, I asked a question. I wonder how often Ted and his family went there. Jen responded that her team found that in the 2 years that the Granthams have owned the cottage, they have never been there, as they rent it out as a holiday home. The management company handles the rentals and simply sends Ted checks every month. Jen continued, I think we could sue for $5 million, and we'll probably settle for $1 million, maybe with an installment plan. At the very least, whatever we get from Ted will cover my fees and give you extra compensation so you can feel like he's been given his due pound of flesh. I suggested another option. Let me voice my idea and you say what you think. Yes, I hate Ted for what he did to my family, but he also has a wife and children. For their sake, I would like to leave him enough so that his wife can file for divorce and get something in the end. Let's agree on 100,000 in cash and a full title to the dacha. Will it work? Jen happily replied, Of course. I'm sure any of Ted's lawyers would happily jump at such an offer to avoid a $5 million lawsuit. Agreed. And let's also make sure Ted's wife gets all the legal support she can to get everything she can from him. Jen responded enthusiastically, I love it. Moreover, I am ready to represent her for free, just to repay her for having to put up with such a husband. I was surprised. Why do you think that you owe her something? Do you know her? No, but I owe her for having the kind of husband that ultimately led Cheryl to ruin our marriage, which gave me the chance to be with you. I laughed and hugged Jen and kissed her, saying, So you like the idea of hanging out at the lake? We can buy a boat and wakeboards for the kids. She simply smiled and said, I'm with you, dear, as she picked up the last folder. The third folder was titled Dirty Wives. Jen opened it and said, This is what I really want to do. I hope that you will allow me to do everything possible against the website itself, its developers, and the main owners. With a sparkle in my eyes, I replied, Go ahead, lawyer, smash these scoundrels. Jen continued, These people prey on weak and gullible women by posting and selling their videos without proper consent. The first documents require notarized consents and releases from Cheryl and Ted, since he also appears in each video. If they can't provide genuine consent forms, and I'm confident they won't, I will file lawsuits for invasion of privacy, disruption of family relationships, fraud, possession and sale of stolen property, and sexual assault. She laid out the papers on the table and explained that her team had already compiled the company's complete financial statements and knew every penny made not only from Cheryl's video, but also from other videos and advertising on the site. Jen added, We know the earnings are in the millions of dollars. The site earned almost $2 million from Cheryl's video alone. The good news is that we will get all that money and more. I thought that this amount alone was great news, but I asked, if this is good news, then what is the bad news? The bad news is that at the moment more than 100,000 copies of Cheryl's video have already been downloaded and spread across the internet. It will be impossible to recall them back. Cheryl will have to live with this for the rest of her life. At some point, people who know her and your family may come across one or more of the videos, and over time, your children will likely find out about it too. You will need to talk to Cheryl about how you, as parents, are going to deal with this shame. You should also think about how to explain this to children. It's better for them to hear from you than for one of their friends to show them the video. Her words stunned me, but I knew she was right. Despite everything Cheryl has done, we are still parents. Collecting my thoughts, I asked, So what amount of claims against these scoundrels do you have in mind? With a smile on her lips, she said, Are you ready for this? I nodded. We intend to file a claim for $100 million, and if it goes to trial with a jury, I'm sure they'll award us something close to that amount. Once the site owners see our evidence, they will realize that it will be easier for them to settle the case. We will offer them no criminal charges in exchange for a $30 million settlement. $30 million, I almost screamed. Do you really think this is possible? Jen replied, I'm absolutely sure that they will not only agree to 30 million, but they will be eager to make a deal as long as we do not press criminal charges. But, I said, their real crime is against Cheryl, not me. How can I get compensation from them? Jan answered my question. Well, that's the beauty of it. Their crime was directed at you as a married couple, and under the law, an attack on one party is an attack on both. Also, while we won't be filing charges, you can be sure that their state's attorney general will shut down this site, and this case will undoubtedly lead to a full audit of their finances by the IRS. I wouldn't be surprised if the majority owners of Wicked Wives end up in federal prison for 10 to 20 years each. Jan fell silent and asked if I understood everything we were talking about. I told her that I kind of understood, but all this still doesn't fit in my head. She said, "Jim, these trials will be quite quick as those involved will want to settle out of court. None of them want all this garbage to come out in court or for the trials to drag on indefinitely." She gave me time to think about what she said. Then she continued, "I assume that everything will be completed within 2 to 3 months maximum. Not only will you be the proud owner of a lake home, but your bank account will also be filled with at least $40 million. You realize that you will become a very rich man, don't you?" I was stunned, to say the least. I sat in silence as it all began to dawn on me. Is this really happening? Am I, James T. Iverson, a multimillionaire? Jan excused herself to use the bathroom and spent almost 10 minutes there before returning. I'm sure she didn't need that much time to do her business, but she thought I needed some alone time. When she returned, she spoke in her professional voice. "I took detailed notes on everything we agreed on. My assistant will prepare all the necessary legal documents to initiate all these actions. They will be ready for your signature at our meeting tomorrow at 16 o'clock. Is this right for you, Jim?" Again, I simply nodded my head in agreement. Jan closed the folders, went to the coat rack, and, taking her jacket, asked, "Well, big guy, do you still want to go to dinner, or would you rather spend this evening alone, thinking about all this?" I looked at her, stood up, and, taking her hands, said, "Everything that I need to think about must now be thought through with my future bride. Let's go have dinner." Jan laughed and said, "Listen, Guy, if you think this can be considered a marriage proposal, then you are mistaken. I want a ring, roses, and for you to get down on one knee before you get my answer. Understood?" I laughed back and said, "Darling, from now on I will pamper you properly, and as far as possible, you will get everything you want." She lightly tapped me on the arm and said, "Cowboy, you're already all I need." That evening, after dinner, we spent the night with her, making sure that every room in her apartment was properly sanctified. 6 months later, screams and laughter could be heard from the lake. Mark and Lynn had brought their friends to spend the weekend in a cozy house by the water. Youthful enthusiasm, fun, and a feeling of complete freedom filled the surrounding area. Lynn and her high school friend settled into Lynn's room, which had 2 single beds, perfect for their teenage conversations and secrets late into the night. Mark and his friend decided to camp in the loft, which had a bunk bed that added a touch of adventure to their overnight stay. The house was full of life and laughter, and the lake reflected the evening glare of the setting sun, creating the perfect conditions for a summer vacation. Meanwhile, all legal claims related to recent events were resolved exactly as Jan predicted. Within 10 days, Simpson Technologies settled the case, apparently not wanting to prolong the unpleasant situation. As I expected, Old Man Simpson, the head of the company, was furious with Ted Grantham, the man he once considered one of his trusted managers. Mr. Simpson personally contacted me to apologize for the entire situation that unfolded with Cheryl while she was working at his company under Ted. His regret was genuine, and he admitted that placing his employees under such dubious leadership was a serious mistake. The situation was resolved quickly and without unnecessary delay. Ted was fired the same day as soon as Mr. Simpson received a letter with evidence from Jan's law firm. Not wanting to leave it at the level of formalities, that same evening Simpson personally went to visit Cheryl at her parents' to express his regret and explain himself to her family. He met with Cheryl alone and, despite the fact that she was also guilty of bad behavior, Mr. Simpson felt sorry for her for the way Grantham treated her. Of course, her return to her old job was impractical, as rumors of what had happened quickly spread throughout the office. They both acknowledged that the work environment would have made her extremely uncomfortable. Simpson Technologies offered Cheryl a compensation package that would keep her on salary and with full benefits for the next 2 years. She was not required to go to work and was free to look for another job while this compensation was in effect. In addition, Mr. Simpson personally added $20,000 of his own funds to this package. He left his personal check for that amount with her that same day. I agreed and accepted the $10 million agreement that Jan offered. We later learned that $5 million was paid out by Simpson Insurance Company, and the remaining $5 million came from Simpson Technologies' corporate investment account. We received a lake house from Ted Grantham, as well as $100,000 as an additional compensation package. These funds more than covered all legal expenses associated with the work of the law firm Milliken, Thompson, and Shane. Our settlement with him was reached within 30 days after Jan and I initiated the process. This settlement was the least painful of all his problems. My lawyer, Jan, later represented Lillian Grantham in her divorce from Ted and did so for free. Jan ensured that Lillian received every last penny of Ted's available funds, including 60% of his entire retirement savings. And that wasn't enough. As a result of a full internal investigation and audit of Ted Grantham's expenses over the past 7 years, Simpson Technologies filed charges of fraud and embezzlement against him. These charges will likely leave him in debt and most likely land him in prison for 5 to 10 years. The owners, developers, and the Wicked Wives website itself eventually offered us a $35 million deal, which we accepted. These funds were deposited into our investment account after taxes. As part of the agreement, we dropped the charges against us for falsifying documents. Fake, you ask? Yes. In response to our original lawsuit, they attempted to present poorly fabricated consents purporting to be signed by Cheryl and Ted. These documents were quickly refuted, and we had sufficient grounds to initiate criminal proceedings against them if we decided to do so. The site was permanently shut down, and the Attorney General filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of all other victims of their vicious practices. All video files from the website were destroyed by the Attorney General's office. This was somewhat of a consolation, although nothing could be done about the tens of thousands of files that were downloaded by users around the world. I had seen Cheryl several times over the past 6 months, and it was obvious that life had not been easy for her. There was a certain stiffness in her face and fatigue in her posture. We know she now regrets her past choices, but the damage done cannot be undone. She moved into the 3-bedroom part of the duplex and is renting out the 2-bedroom part. She severed all contact with Ted Grantham and any other men with whom she had relationships through her work at Simpson Technologies. Her appearance changed. Her body began to resemble a driven horse, as one would expect. She is emotionally broken, and it is obvious to everyone, except when she spends time with the children. They revive her and remain the only bright spot in her life these days. A compensation package and gift from Simpson Technologies allowed her to carry out minor renovations and furnishings on the duplex to create a welcoming space for her children. I allowed her to take any furniture from our house that she wanted or needed. I was still planning on doing some renovations and remodeling to help erase some of the memories. I ended up replacing everything, even the dishes and kitchen utensils. She's slowly trying to earn forgiveness and maybe a little bit of acceptance among my parents and some of our closest friends. She never claims that our problems or the reason for our divorce were caused by anything other than her own bad decisions. She takes full responsibility for the destruction of our family. She even confessed to her parents the extent and duration of her infidelity, much to their shock and disappointment. When she sees Jan and me together, there is often a sad look in her eyes. This is understandable, but at the same time, she sincerely wishes us happiness and all the best. She says I deserve only the best, and I think she really means it. Cheryl was able to get a job at the local public library. The pay isn't high, but she says it's a safe place for her. She doesn't need it financially, but she needed something to occupy her time. She organizes her schedule so that in the months when the children are with her, she works from 9 to 3, and in the months when I have the children, she works the evening shift from 3 to 9. Her mom told us that Cheryl realizes she has ruined her life and caused permanent damage to all the relationships that are important to her. That's why she arranged her schedule so that on days when the children were not with her, she worked in the evenings. She doesn't want to be available for dates and plans to remain single for the rest of her life. She intends to devote herself to her children and work in the library. Even on her days off, she works as Miss Cheryl the storyteller for preschoolers at the library. My ex-slim and fit wife deliberately gained weight and is now, according to some, overweight. She also radically changed her hairstyle and hair color. She dyed her hair jet black. Her mother asked her about it, and she admitted that she had been recognized on the street twice because of an internet video. She deliberately changes her appearance to avoid recognition. Yes, she will have to live with the consequences of her actions for the rest of her life. Her mother told me that she constantly feels shame. I almost feel sorry for her. Almost, but not quite. Cheryl doesn't know yet that I invested $2 million in an annuity for her that she will start receiving in 2 years. I won't tell her until she starts worrying about what to do when the Simpson Technologies compensation package ends. When the compensation ends, the annuity will begin to be paid. She will receive $2,500 per month for life. In the event of her death, the remaining funds will be divided among our children. $2,500 a month, of course, is not enough for a full life, but combined with her work at the library and the rent from the duplex, she can live quite comfortably. When I first proposed the idea of this annuity to Jan, I was concerned about her reaction since Cheryl was now the other woman. But to her credit, Jan not only supported this idea, but also completed all the necessary legal documents. She once again showed that I remain one of the last good guys. Of course, I still feel a lot of anger for what Cheryl did to me, our marriage, and our family. But as time goes on, I don't wish her harm. I think that there will always be a part in my heart that loves her, but at the same time, I cannot live with her. Over time, I can imagine that we will all get together for holidays and special events. We had already been to a few school events together, and it wasn't as awkward as I had imagined. I continue to use the words we, us, and our. This is because 60 days after my divorce was finalized, Jan and I got married. I know. Most of my friends and family said it was too soon, but try telling me that in 40 years Jan and I are enjoying our old age together. Our marriage is a match made in heaven. It's funny, but she still makes excuses, saying that her breasts are too small and her butt is too big. I don't know if I will ever be able to explain to her that for me, she is an absolutely perfect person. I told her that when her busty friends got old and struggled with sagging curves, she would still be slim and toned. Plus, I love her small breasts and everything else about her. Usually, after such comments, I start chasing her around the room or around the yard, and we fall into each other's arms, laughing until we drop. It turned out that Jan's first husband could not have children. They found out about this after several years of trying to have a child. Jan said the tests were quite humiliating for him, but they learned to live with it. Last Monday, we found out that Jan can have children, just like me. In about 7 months, there will be a new life in our family. Although we no longer need the money, Jan still works 3 days a week at Milliken, Thompson, and Shane. She enjoys her job, and because she is a full partner, she can take time off whenever she wants. By the way, I no longer work for Barnstrow Incorporated. It was a great job, and they treated me well. They were sad that I was leaving, and to some extent, I was sad too. But managing an investment portfolio of over $40 million is actually a full-time job. Well, someone has to do this. Jan and I are enjoying our new life together, and sometimes it feels like we are living in a real fairy tale. The house by the lake has become our family refuge, a place where worries are forgotten, where every day is full of warmth and joy. Here, among nature, everything seems simpler and more real, and standing on the shore, Jan and I often look at the reflection of the forest in the calm water, as if at a symbol of our quiet but happy life. This house quickly became a favorite place not only for us, but also for the children. They like to bring their friends here for the weekend, and from early morning until late evening the house is filled with cheerful screams and ringing laughter. We often hear them frolicking by the lake, having games on the water, or gathering around the fire, telling each other stories. These sounds give life to the house, turning it from just a cozy place into a truly warm and lively place where everyone is happy. At such moments, I understand that life has acquired a new, deeper meaning for Jan and me. We found here not just comfort and tranquility, but also a feeling of a true home, a place where you can be yourself, surrounded by loved ones. This is a new stage filled with love, laughter, and warm moments that we create together. Our relationship with Cheryl improved, although it remained strictly formal. She takes good care of the children, and we try to maintain civilized relations for their sake. They really remain the main link between us, and this is probably right. Now I understand that sometimes fate puts us in front of difficult trials so that we can rethink life, let go of the past, and move on, finding our true happiness. Jan has become for me not only a reliable partner, but also the woman with whom I want to spend the rest of my life. We have many plans ahead, and I look forward to every new day. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.